This conference will now be recorded.
It is January the 28th, Thursday, and we're having notice of our regular meeting of our Rome City Council. Notice is hereby given in accordance with the order of the Office of the Governor, issued March 16th and most recently January 5th. The Council of the City of Rome will conduct its regular meeting scheduled for 6:30 p.m. on Thursday by telephone conference in order to advance the public health goal of limiting face-to-face meetings, also called social distancing, to allow the spread of the coronavirus. This meeting will be closed to in-person attendance. Cynthia, we don't have a quorum yet.
Correct. We were going to have the public hearing first, and then we'll have the city council start after that. So we don't have a quorum because this item is not on the agenda.
Okay, so I apologize. We will open the public hearing. Lenore, are you available to tell us all the good stuff?
Yes, I am. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes, and Lenora is with GrantWorks.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that. Yes, my name is Lenore. I'm with GrantWorks. We are the hired grant administrator for this program called the Texas Development Block Grant Program. It's administered by the Texas Department of Agriculture, and particularly you guys are looking at the Community Development Grant, or the CD grant for short. And it's a regional based down by like the COGS program, and it works to provide money and grants for water, sewer, housing, infrastructure, and other kind of projects in order to meet the needs of certain standards. And each program is a little bit different. So CD bases those standards off of low to moderate income standards and a few other small things, whereas something like the Downtown Revitalization or Main Street program bases it off of a blighted area. So eligible applicants are cities of less than 50,000 in population or counties less than 200,000, which you guys are eligible in that sense. The maximum amount of grant funding is $350,000, and some of the basics for the scoring is set up by the regional COG, which is the North Central Texas COG for you guys, which if you have any questions, that can be found online, and you guys can email me or call me if you have any questions on what the COG criteria was. Applications can be submitted once every 2 years, and there is a local match required, and the local match is dependent upon the population of the city or county. And in this case, with your population, let me just double check here. The match for Rome would be $35,000 on top of the $350,000 grant fund. So the projects can be both citywide or target areas, depending on what kind of project you're doing and how the project impacts people. And with those projects, they must meet a 51% LMI, or low moderate income, and the contract term once funded is 2 years. And the 2021 DRP program is similar, but like I said, it's based off of blighted areas, and it works to improve downtown or Main Street areas. And if you've received funding in any of the last 6 years, it does knock points off of the scoring, but I don't think you guys are looking to apply for a DRP. And similar, it has a contract term of 2 years. When we're looking at CD programs, eligible activities are historically water and sewer facilities, but also it depends on the COG. It can also be street and drainage, as well as some other projects depending on what the criteria is. It's a pretty open program. And I have been informed that there has been some questions from the community that are unable to attend, so I'm just going to go over a few extra items here. The application timeline, this application is due on May 3rd. And ideally, we will be getting a fairly substantially complete application done by end of March, early April for a complete review from the community as well. So there'll be a similar thing to a public hearing tonight, but with the application included. Other things to go over the engineering / request for qualifications timeline. I was informed by my colleague Lauren, that the engineering RFQ packets and proposals are due February 9th at 2 p.m. And is everything okay? Okay. So
Repeat what you just said about the engineering thing. You're coming across a little muted.
Well, if we could get people that are online, if you could mute your phones, we're here having a lot of background noise as well.
and does this help as well?
Yes, I believe it may.
Okay, fantastic. So about the engineering and the request for qualifications, I will probably refer to that as the RFQ. The engineering packets from whoever you sent it out to, or from whoever Lauren sent it out to, is due on February 9th at 2 p.m. There is just a waiting time for the engineer proposals to come in. Once those come in, the selection is, I believe, scheduled for the 25th. Correct me if I'm wrong, Cynthia. And in that selection process, Lauren, my coworker, will be helping you by clearing the engineer companies through the SAM, which is a government program that ensures that they are not faulty on any debt or grant programs. But ultimately, it's the committee's decision to score and select, just like you guys did for us as grant administrators. So that should be done, I hope, by the February 25th. And once that is done, the engineers and I can help the city formulate the project and make sure that it is as competitive as possible. And then there are some questions about consultant costs and whether an application is funded or not. GrantWorks provides application writing as a free of cost service. We do not charge for this. If you do not get funded, there is zero fee on our behalf. Provided we haven't gotten the proposals in from the engineers yet, but I have yet to come across an engineering company that does charge for theirs. So hopefully will also be $0 just for the application process and writing part. Once things get funded, depends on the proposal. I looked up the proposal that we sent in with you guys. It's agreed upon that we would be charging $32,900 or 11%, whichever one is less. And more than likely, it'll come out to be $32,900, which is significantly less because the grant or the application amount maxes out at $35,000. And similarly, TDA also limits how much an engineer can make with $55,000 in total. So even if the engineer does come over, it will be limited at $55,000 unless you guys agree upon adding match to that amount. So this will all depend on what kind of engineers supply or what they provide in their proposals. But there is no charge on our behalf for just the app writing portion. This is a free of charge service. If you don't get funded, you don't have to pay us. What other questions are coming? I don't see any other. I already went over the types of projects. Are there any other questions from the community on this?
Now's the time to ask her any questions you'd like to ask about our hopefully upcoming grant.
Okay, this is Kathy Coffey, and I do have a couple of questions. I looked up the TDBG online, and it did talk about low-income housing. Are we including housing with this, or is this? I don't understand why that's mentioned.
It is a possible. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. I didn't know if that was going to be part of it.
No, it's not a requirement to do low income housing. If there's low income housing in the area, we do include that for like the calculations of what the low moderate income levels are. But if there is none, that doesn't count towards anything. And we aren't gearing towards making low income housing. It depends entirely on what like you guys as the community members want. If you want to see streets redone, we will have to take into consideration that, yeah, we do have to work in low moderate income areas, but only 51% needs to meet that. So as long as we are working in some areas that are low income areas and also other parts of the city, it benefits and it
So
counts
this is
towards
for the
it.
wastewater plant. Am I correct, or am I?
We haven't decided that yet. Officially, as of right now, we're opening that up to the community. If there is suggestions like a wastewater treatment plant, we will happily take that into consideration, of course.
Okay, well, okay, Mayor Wilson, help me out here. This grant is just money for us to do with what we want then, not necessarily for public works. Is that what I'm hearing, or am I wrong?
Correct. But the way I
No.
understand this, Kathy, and you jump in if I'm wrong, Lenora, the point system to obtain the grant, you get more points for one area than you do for the other. In other words, we want to improve water and its in structure. Am I correct, Lenora? We get more
Yeah,
points than if we
yeah,
wanted to paint a building or something. It's
right. So
there's a scale.
in theory, yeah, you could put this money towards anything. Unfortunately, with the scoring system and how many places really like this program, it does make it hard if you try to go towards something that's not giving you points. So I believe the North Central Texas COG give points for water and sewer lines, wastewater improvements, street improvements, and drainage improvements. And there might be one more that I'm overlooking, but it does give a wide variety of what possible points will give you more compatibility.
Okay, and
And
how
that's
long do
what
we have to pay this bond back?
Say that again?
How long do we have to pay this grant back?
It's a grant. There is no paying back.
We just have to come up with the 35,000 and the 32.9. Okay.
right. And
No, the 32.9 will be coming out of the grant funds. The 35,000 of the match will be, it hasn't been officially decided yet. That'll be passed by resolution at a later date. But generally, people put the $35,000 match towards construction costs.
What
so
does that do?
halfway through and at the end, basically, we have to pay that amount back, but not the 350,000.
No, yeah, the 35,000 match is TDA's way to ensure that you're invested in this project. So they ask for a small match amount, which is 10% in this case, so that it makes it so that the city is invested in the completion of this project, because they want to make sure that these projects are started and finished. And so they hope that by you guys putting in a match, you'll be invested into completing it as well.
So
Kathy,
we get
does
a
that,
grant for, well, sort of, I'm a little dense here and I apologize. So we get $350,000. The 32.9 we take out of that 350,000, so we don't actually get 350,000.
no, we
Yeah, we
actually get the 350, but we have to make 2 installment payments of half of the 35 and half of the 35 at the end.
Okay, so where does that come from?
Right.
That comes from
I think
us.
right. I think I understand your question.
When
Was it
she didn't
Kathy,
say-
you said?
Beg your
I'm
pardon?
sorry, Kathy.
Okay, sorry. I think I understand your question. So yes, essentially the 32.9 that the grant admin fee, and then later on with the engineering fee as well, will be coming out of the construction budget. And I don't have the amounts right now, because officially, if the engineer provides us a budget, I can better deduct exactly how much money will be applied to a project. But on average, with a 35,000 match, it's going to give you about $270-ish $1,000 of actual project cost. And
Okay, yeah, that was my question.
understanding, And this, I mean, paying 32.9 or the engineers 55,000 is for like a 3-year commitment, because we start working before the application and then continue to help and follow through with project completion for another 2 years after that. We will take care of the entire project from the moment it gets funded to helping with any like laws or regulations having to follow through, as well as like making sure the construction people are doing things on time and getting interviews done, as well as like follow up and getting all the documents into TDA to ensure that you've gotten your project done.
Okay, and I understand the council is not listening to this right now, but don't they need to know this information too and hear this, or am I missing something? Why are they not included?
They got this last council meeting, Kathy, basically, and one other one. GrantWorks has made 2 presentations to the council before the grant was approved to go forward, or the request for a grant, I should say.
I guess I'm asking, why wasn't this put on the city agenda like the other public meetings, not just by itself? It was confusing when I went to the Rhome City website and you see the agenda, and then at the same time you see this meeting, and it's like, well, why wasn't it on the agenda? I don't understand.
Right, they have asked it to be separate. They want their presentation from GrantWorks to be separate from a council meeting, and with hopes we get public input like you're doing.
Okay, so they just didn't
And
want
this
to
is
count
Donna
it.
Amos.
And sorry, say that again. Who is this?
I was saying this is John Amos. I'm not sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
Okay. So I have a follow-up on the amount of money on the 350,000 match, and then the 32,900 to you, or 11%, and then the engineering fees of 55,000. So I got that to be at around 262,000, and we have to pay back the 32.9 and the 55,000 within 2 years time frame. Did I?
No.
Somebody
So the
cut
only
in
thing
and
that
out.
you
I
pay,
apologize.
sorry, the only thing that you are paying from the city's budget is the match of 35,000.
And that's how long you said again?
That should be split up over 2 years of separating it over 2 budget years. So the first fiscal year you'll put in whatever's half of 35,000, 17,500, and then again the second year.
Joanne, where does that 17.5 come from in the budget? This year's budget is set.
It's not going to happen this year because the grant, if I understand it right, if we are approved, it will not happen till probably in November. So we're into a new budget year. And as we do the budget for the following year, we will have to consider that obligation. And depending on how fast it is and what we have done, the final payment is due when the project is completed. That well may be in a follow-on fiscal year.
Okay, so then a question back to, and forgive me, I hope I say this correct. It's Lenore, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
When you say that for 2 years after you monitor the project and things of that nature, so I'm going to give you a hypothetical and maybe you can explain this. So let's just say that the council chooses to use this for roads, and I'll use the bridge. I think that's a very good example, and Joanne or Kathy or whoever else is on here, you all can say what you want to say, but we fill a pothole and it's unfilled. We fill a pothole and it's unfilled. And it just is this perpetual problem of filling and not. So when you say your responsibility of 2 years after, is that part of that responsibility that if it's not done and within that 2 years, it just is a continual deterioration, it wasn't done right, you are the one that manages that? And is that fixing and things of that nature come out of the city's costs? Or does that come out of who fixes that? Who pays for that type of stuff?
So hopefully, ideally, so this kind of project won't really help you pay for potholes. That's technically considered a maintenance cost, and CDA doesn't cover maintenance costs. But if you redid the whole street, right?
It
Yeah,
was just an example of something. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But if you redid the whole streets, technically, I mean, I wouldn't be directly involved in helping making sure that the streets are done right, because hopefully the engineer and the construction companies would be doing that because it's their, they're on the ground seeing it. But I would be a part of making sure that it is done right. And so essentially it's a 2-year project. So if you're doing streets, it's going to be completely tearing it down, redoing it, coating it, and everything else on top of that. So hopefully there wouldn't be potholes after that, provided anything that happens a few years down the road from there, that's considered a maintenance cost. So we wouldn't really be involved in that specifically at that point. But in the 2 years' time, we would be we would be working on the project.
Okay. So then I have one follow-up question. I don't want to dominate the time here. However, what is the city's on a grant recourse of the engineering place, or in that the engineering contractors or whatever else not doing it correctly and it's a grant? Do we then have something in some sort of a written form or something that says that at the last 17.5, because X amount of things were done incorrectly, and we can show over 2 years that we don't pay that? Or what recourse does the city have?
This is Sean, Public Works Director. Can I jump in on this?
Certainly. And I'm getting a lot of feedback. Can someone mute? A lot of repeat.
Yes.
And
So
Sean is our public works guy.
So on contracts, the contractor is responsible for any failures until the completion of the contract. After the contract is technically completed, there is a 2-year maintenance bond that if any damages are done, that the city can go to that maintenance bond and have that contractor come back and repair those damages for up to 2 years. And then also on the contract, if there's anything that is not done right, there are things that we can do to make sure it's done right. That's when they have maintenance bonds, and we can go back and we can remove a contractor if they're not fulfilling the duties that they're supposed to, and stuff like that. So there are stuff in the contract that protects the city even 2 years after the job is technically complete.
Sean, thank you. I appreciate that. Does the maintenance bond have to be applied for, or does that come part of this other grant?
That's the maintenance bond is in the contract, and the contractor is responsible for the surety of that maintenance bond. So they have to pay for that maintenance bond, and it's through a company, basically an insurance company, and they basically insure that project 2 years after the substantial completion of the project.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate that.
Okay, Tommy.
Yeah, Joanne, to follow up on John's question, what are you going to take the money out of for the first year and the second year? What are you going to take out of the budget to get to that money?
Hopefully we'll have additional sales tax, Tommy, and we may not. We'll just have to be very prudent when we look at the budget, because we will be obligated for that 17 whatever thousand. So it will have to come from somewhere. It's a little premature to know yet. We see kind of where we're headed with our budget for the following year.
But this is in November, right, Joanne? Like in 8 months, November.
And we have
probably not that premature, is it?
No, what I'm saying, until we know what our budget is, we will have to budget for this somewhere when we do the starting November budget. We can't go back in and look for those dollars. So when Cynthia starts all of her good luck on the budget, she will keep that in the back of her mind. Somewhere we need 17,000 whatever. But remember, this 17,000 plus an additional 17,000, we do get $350,000 for it.
Well, actually, by the time you pay the fees, it'd be $262,100. Take out the 17.5 that we have to figure out where that's coming, and you're now down to about $250. So basically you're 100 grand in before you ever even get started, and we still don't even know where the 17.5 is coming from unless you have it in the back of your head to already raise taxes or something like that. It's kind of that old term. I know some of us on here are old enough to know you can't squeeze blood out of a turnip, so something's got to give.
Okay,
So I just
Cynthia,
want to
help me
clarify
out.
that. I'm sorry, I just want to clarify that you putting the city putting the $35,000 match does not go towards TDA. It actually goes towards the construction. So it's an additional $35,000 you're putting towards. So if you're calculating 260,000 as the construction budget, it would actually be with this additional 35 on top of that. Essentially, you're investing that money into the city.
Well, I thought even you had said something about 250 or 270,000. Am I wrong?
Yeah, that's just rough estimates off the top of my head. I can't look at a close detail of a budget until we know what the engineer is looking at and how much they're going to be charging plus what they're projecting as the budget is. It's hard to pin down numbers, but it would be around that, but then addition to the 35,000.
Right. So your number of let's just say you said 275. Your number of 275 isn't really all that far off of my 261, is it? I mean,
yeah,
I guess I'm missing something there.
I'm not trying to say that your numbers are wrong. I just want to make sure that it's understood that the $35,000 match is not being paid back to anyone. It's going into the city. So what you're budgeting for that would be what you might normally budget into city or street repairs.
Okay, so I apologize then. So can you explain one more time how you come up with a rough guess of 275 off the 330 or 350,000? Because I thought, so let me repeat what I thought you said, and then if you can correct me, that'd be fantastic so I have it right in my head. And I apologize that I'm acting like a kindergartner, but when you're talking about big money, I try to understand. So I had understood you to say that once funded, the consultant fee basically would be $32,900 or 11% of whatever it was the grant, and that the engineering folks would charge around $55,000. That may go up or down depending on which engineering company our council picks or whatever the case may be. But were those not the terms that you used to kind of come up with a rough 275? You guys have a consulting fee, is that not right? Or
No, that is correct. That is correct. And I'm not saying your numbers are wrong. I don't have exact numbers. I'm trying to do math without a calculator right now on a pen and paper. So give me a second here. But essentially,
well, I wasn't trying to be specific because you did say it was up or down. I was just trying to, make the fact that we pay $17,500, but then we pay a consulting fee of $32,900. Which you did say that comes out of the grant. So that makes sense. It's not necessarily the city just doing that. The charge of $55,000 for the engineering does, in fact, come back out of that $350,000. But I think what's important for people to hear is that the bond is for $350,000, but in essence, it's really not, because you have $33,000 that's coming off for a consult fee, and you have $55,000 coming off. So people in Rome tend to be a little bit more on the literal side, and if you're going to say it's $350,000, that's not actually accurate. It's going to be more around 260 to 275. It's a difference of painting or fixing 12 buildings or fixing mold in the insufficient city hall. Is I guess the point I'm trying to make. I wasn't trying to put you on a spot or say that you were incorrect.
Can I ask it a different way? Jonna, I'm sorry. Can I ask it a different way?
No, please.
Okay. The grant, if we get it, say hypothetically, we've qualified and we get the grant for $350,000. That's the maximum, correct?
Correct.
Okay. What comes out of that $350,000? Is it your consulting fee? Does anything come out of that? Or do we have to come up with all this other money?
Consultant and engineering fee will be coming out of that.
Okay. And we know your consulting fee is $32,900. We don't know what the engineering fee is yet. And then what is left over is what we have to do the project with, correct?
Right.
But we won't know until the application is submitted and okay to know exactly what we're going to get. Will we know the amount that we're going to get before we sign off?
And I don't know if this helps any, but even if you do, so this whole process is, open and transparent to the best of our ability. Once we get an application up and going, that'll be open for review, right? And you'll be able to see the exact numbers.
Okay.
And then once you submit it, if you decide to continue and go ahead with submission, you can always back out. It doesn't cost you anything, at least on our behalf. And then
Okay. And again,
you,
I'm not trying
and
to
if
give
you
you a hard
submit it,
time. I'm just trying
no,
to
no,
understand because I need you to write in crayon like I'm in kindergarten to explain this to me.
No. And I just want, I feel like a big part of this is just understanding that, what
Right,
possible
right.
consequences could come out of this, right? And I just want to
Right,
make sure
right.
that this whole process can be stopped at any point you guys feel uncomfortable, right? So even if you submit it and TDA is like, congratulations, you have a great project, here's the money, you still have, I think, up for, I think, maybe 2 months after TDA says, hey, you guys did a great project, here's your money, to be like, actually, we can't. So it's entirely possible to still back out even if you do submit a project. Because I think
Okay.
at this point, right, obviously a lot of the concerns are coming from how much money can actually be spent and how much is that going to go towards a feasible
Yeah, I
project.
was just trying to
Is that
understand
correct?
the whole process because I've never dealt with anything like this before. So I just wanted to,
Yeah.
we get you tell somebody we get a grant for $350,000, they're going to think, okay, we got $350,000. Where'd it go? They're not going to understand that, oh, well, this had to come out of there and this had to come out of there. And that's where I was trying to rationalize in my own head how this works. Not that
Right.
anything's
No.
wrong or anybody's doing anything wrong. I just want to understand.
No, I totally understand. No, I understand.
Joanne, may I ask you a question? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I apologize.
No, go ahead.
Yes, and I don't know where you are on this screen. Who's asking what is signed?
Joanne, this is Jonna Amos.
Okay.
And
Yes,
so the
ma'am.
question I have is, do you know if, I heard her say you can stop at any point and the council can vote to do all that, which, by the way, that's slightly comforting just on the off chance, because November is, going to be tomorrow by the time we all wake up, because hell, it's almost Christmas again. Anyway, the engineering part, Joanne, is this something where we have a clause for them that if something happens, we're protected so we don't get sued, to say we still have to pay them $55,000?
We are on the street right now for bids for an engineering firm. And the engineering firm will also be blessed by GrantWorks. So, and I don't remember.
Yeah, and GrantWorks, we are very community oriented as well. Like, we do not want to harm any community along the process. We have negotiated fees down along many times for this to work out, because ultimately we don't want to hurt you guys in the long run if you do get funding and if you don't. So since we're helping out with the engineering, we are definitely going to be looking. I'm not involved in that process. That's Lauren, my coworker, but she is very skillfully trained, and she knows that, a good engineer will not charge you for the application process before you even submit.
And I guess I didn't hear your question. Do your last sentence again, if you will, Jonna.
I basically was just trying to make sure that we were protected if these engineers that come in, if we decide to halt everything, we won't be sued for the $55,000, because if you can consider struggling for $17,500, $55,000 is detrimental. I just wanted to make sure that people were,
Yeah, and Lenore, am I correct that y'all are involved in the selection process of the engineer?
We won't help with the actual selection process. That's the council's discretion entirely. But Lauren will be advising for sure. She'll look over proposals as well. But it's entirely up to council to decide which one. And in those proposals, they'll say whether, this is going to be a fee before even you get funded or after. I've yet to come across any engineering company that has, but they should explicitly say that in the proposal. And I would advise that the council members looked for that.
Okay, so our council, Jonah, I'm gonna butt in here. Our council will actually pick the engineer, but GrantWorks will be a part of that selection process. Is that what I'm hearing?
Y- We will advise. We can't help with the selection. We'll give
That's
you
the
all
council's
the
job.
help. But yeah, that's council's job entirely.
Okay.
And
Y'all
the
have
reason
had
why
some,
we don't want to help that much is because obviously you guys want to pick with who you feel most comfortable with. And we're not directly involved, nor do we know the history of the city as well as you guys do. So we don't want to step on anyone's toes on that matter.
okay, Mr. Donovan, you have a question?
No, sorry, I was just having my hand by my face. My apologies.
Oh, well, hey, at least I saw it. Sometimes I don't even see it. Okay, if we don't have any more questions. Okay, Lenore.
I just want to add that, I definitely understand a lot of the fears and concerns about this. There is no harm for getting the application started and going. And ultimately, yeah, you might be taking a few, like 90,000 max out of it from the engineering and the consultant fees, but that's still a 260,000 that could be going towards regular, like, things that need to be improved upon greatly that you wouldn't have to pay for already. So that in a lot of ways you're still benefiting by getting 250 plus thousand on it. So, and I understand the concern, and this can be talked about more in depth along the whole process once we figure out what the project is. And I'm very glad for this very open discussion. It's very encouraging to have a very engaged community, because then that means that the project, if we do, get it one, will be a very good one and very beneficial for everyone.
Okay, this is Kathy again. Can you just clarify one other thing for me?
Sure.
When you talked about the points, I don't really understand how all that works, and I don't expect you to explain it to me, but you said for the low income housing, for the projects that we want to get done, the low income will give us more points. Is that for the whole city or the area in which the project is going to be done?
The area in which the target could be done. So in terms of points, the citywide LMI, or the low moderate income percentage, is really below par. It's below 51%. So you couldn't do a citywide. But in the target area, and this is another thing that GrantWorks provides free of charge, is that we will help survey an area in order to make sure that it tries to get to that percentage so that you get those extra, because it's 40 points, which is a lot of points. And if you can get that percentage, or that percentage match, or percentage point of 51% of LMI, then it's 40 points addition, which is really good.
Okay, well, I feel like I'm better informed now than I was at the beginning, which I'm not saying that says a lot, but thank you for your help and understanding.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely my pleasure, everyone.
Ma'am,
thank you for the very good questions.
I have one more, it seems how you said that. This is John Amos. May I take, Joanne, do you have time for me to ask one more? Or if you don't, then you can just.
Because we've got to move on to our council meeting soon, but go for it. That's what we're here for.
Okay, so the one, by you saying that, so I am going to do another hypothetical, if you don't mind, so I can, picturing things in my head is how I understand the best, and so I apologize for the hypotheticals. If you have an area of town that has Section 8 housing, for example, and they live on Wobbly Street, and then you have a house that's, let's not say Section 8 because that almost seems tacky. Let's say you have houses that are valued on the real estate market at $25,000. Then you have an area of town where the houses are rated at $100,000, and then you have an area of town where you have houses that are $400,000, or like where Rhome is going to grow. They put out years ago that they will be reasonably priced between $300,000 and $500,000. You're stating that if we did the roads on the $25,000 value homes, there would be more points and more ways to get that done than it would be in, say, the brand new neighborhood in Rolling V, where they're going to be $500,000. So if the streets are equally bad, we will be able to utilize the grant better in the areas that are lower income rather than based on the damages of the streets.
Yeah.
For points.
Yeah, for points, I get that. And in this I would have to see a map and be able. I wish I was there. We could hold this in person and like show you on a map how this would go. But in theory, in your hypothetical, if those streets were connected and we were working on them contiguously, like all in one kind of like go, in theory, you could still do them all as long as it hit 51%, right? And 51% just means like one household more than the other one. So 51% would be low to moderate, or the $25,000 household area versus the other ones. So in theory, you could still be reaching across quite a bit more than just a low income area, but you still have to work in these low income areas as well.
Right, but I guess you don't have to you don't have to just work in the low income areas to meet your points. You can spread out the grant between the $25,000 house and the $400,000 house to ensure that if in that area of $2,500,000 houses, they have 5 streets that are crappy, but in the $400,000 house area, they have 10 streets that are crappy. To me, it would make sense that you do the 10 streets rather than the 2 streets, but based on the grant, you would probably concentrate on the 2 streets. Maybe if they connected to the $100,000 houses, you may get those 3, but you would work your way towards the higher income, or for example, a brand new neighborhood of $500,000 houses, that would be kind of last.
Correct, yeah.
Understand. Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you, Joanne, for allowing a little extra time for me to ask that question.
Well, I think we need to be as transparent about all this, and both of y'all have had excellent questions. So,
absolutely.
Lenore, do you have anything else before we close this out?
No, not anything specific, but I see that you guys are very engaged and have lots of questions. I just want to throw it out there in order to like assuage any kind of concerns, anything. Feel free to email me. My email address is Lenore, which is my name, Lenore, @grantworks.net. You can probably also ask Cynthia. I'm happy to share that email address with me and just ask me any questions about this project, and I'll do my best to get you answers as soon as possible. And just let me know that you're from the city of Rome.
Okay, everybody heard that. I'm going to close this public hearing, and it is now 7:10 p.m. And I'm going to now ask Cynthia to punch the buttons and see if we've got anybody else there to make for a quorum. Okay, we are looking at the screen to see who might show up here in a moment.
They should be signing on here shortly.
Okay, good.
Well, thank you everyone for your time. I'm going to sign off now. This is Lenore.
Thank you, Lenore.
Have a great night, everyone.
Just to let you know, this is Bob Dransfield with Norton Rose Fulbright, available to you all should you need me whenever you need me. I'll go back to mute. Thank you.
Okay, wait, Bob, before you go away, who are you with?
I'm with Norton Rose Fulbright. We're the bond counsel.
Oh, okay, good.
We talk about your financing options, apparently.
Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate
And I
it.
think we have John Martin here also.
Yep, I see his name.
Okay, we have 2 council people.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
Belay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You're getting feedback on my phone.
We have Michelle Ties with us now.
Like Ashley Majors.
And Josh, were you there but on phone?
You're okay?
Councilman McCabe, are you on here somewhere?
Says he arrived. There he is.
Okay, we now have a quorum, and we will return to our regular council meeting of January the 28th. And we've already covered the authority to have this by the governor's thing. And we do have a quorum. We have Elaine Priest, Michelle Ty, Ashley Majors, Sam Eason, and Josh McCabe are all present. Announcements, two things. January the 21st events, such things happen as we have an opening for 3 vacancies for the May election. Filing period began January the 13th. It ends February the 12th through, and keep in mind, we have strange hours at our city hall, and the form itself needs to be notarized and signed for by the city secretary. So try to work in her hours, or give her a call and say, I'm on my way, or whatever. We don't want anybody not to be signed up for an office if that's what they want. And
Mayor?
Ashley, yes.
I'm sorry. It does not need to be notarized by me, but if you do need it notarized after 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., just give me a call and we can work with your schedule.
So that will work. And if that doesn't work, a plain vanilla notary that doesn't work for Rhome can sign your application. Okay, Ashley, I think you had an announcement. Ashley Majors, place 5.
Sorry, I had myself on mute. So am I the only one?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. I just wanted to say, I think going forward, we all need to work together. This is concerning to our citizens, current and future, if we all cannot get along. It's as easy as respect. And if we don't work together, it is really hard for us not to work if we can't get along, then we're never going to get anything accomplished. It's easy as that. Thank you, Joanne, for making an announcement for our citizens to email us. It's going on to the city website and clicking on our name. I think that's one reason to stay connected with our citizens. Citizens, thank you for making your announcements and being involved with our community. I would like to see more clubs. I think I spoke with Cynthia, and I think Cynthia one day would like to see that as well and make an announcement, but seeing more in our community. I think that is the best thing. I mean, growth is upon us. I'm going to make an announcement as well going forward, but we have, as well as Cynthia, if her article was in the newspaper, Rolling V is knocking at our door. So that as well. So if we can all work together, citizens and city council, let's get something done to make Rome the best place to live. Thank you. That's all I have to say, but let's try to work together this evening, council members. Thank you.
In public presentation, Shannon.
Yes, ma'am. The first one that I received a request from was Jonna Amos.
Sam, may I start? This is Jonna Amos.
Yes, as soon as you're ready.
Thank you. Hello to you all. I don't see who's on the call. Let me introduce myself. My name is Jonna Amos. I'm a Rome citizen and a disabled veteran. I heard about a tax freeze for 65 and older and disabled back prior to the election when everyone was going back and forth spewing nastiness on Facebook. I'd inquired about this and was told that it was also for veterans. That's fantastic in my mind. So once we were presented with the prospect of having over $10 million to fix buildings for our city hall, our senior citizen center, the police department, and the fire department, instead of a simple 4.6 plus or minus $1 million bond that we can apply for again for 3 years without grants, first made me want to puke. But then it quickly prompted me to call Wise County and make certain that my city taxes were in fact frozen based on what I'd heard. No tax hike from Joanne or crap load of debt do I want to endure again in the city of Rome. Taxes were 6 point something back then, which is all in the notes before anybody wants to say anything. Anyway, apologize. Let me get back on track. Selfish as that may feel, that was my motivation for checking on it, making sure that it was in effect. In doing that, I discovered that the Wise County interprets the ordinance differently than our amazing council and our mayor. Let me back up. The mayor and council at the time, Sammy and Leanne.
We've lost you.
I don't want anybody to be confused of which council. Hello? Can you hear me?
We lost
We're
you for a
losing
minute
you.
there.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
So I'm not sure where I left off. I just want to make sure that when I speak of the council and the amazing job they did, that was Sam Eason, Leanne Mikowski, Kenny Crenshaw, Elaine Priest, Josh McCabe, and Mayor Pittman, with the help of the city administrator, Cynthia. I don't want anybody to be confused on who the council members are, who the mayor is, or whatever else, that they provided this opportunity to disabled veterans, people over 65, and other disabled folks in our community. The second reason I wanted to do this presentation was to say thank you. Those folks that I just mentioned a moment ago have had some unfair and horrible things said about them. I have not seen many people just simply say something nice at all about them or to them. I want you folks to know that there are many people in this town that are grateful for the sacrifice of time, energy, and frustration that you have endured to run this town for us. Many are very quick to judge, yet offer nothing in solutions. So tonight, publicly, I'm here to say thank you for helping this town and so many people.
Your time
Without
is up.
hearing a good job. Well, my time was interrupted, so can I have a few more seconds, please?
That is up to the mayor.
No, we better not. We've set a precedence that when it happens, Jonah, but we appreciate your comments. Who
Not
is
a
the next
problem.
one, Shannon?
Next up is Deborah Beecraft. Deborah, when you're ready.
Thank you, Shannon. My name is Deborah Beecraft. I live at 360 West 2nd. And I would like to talk about two things. The first is the grant, which is a lot different than a bond. And personally, if someone was going to hand me $350,000, if I handed them $55,000 plus $35,000, I'm coming out ahead. I'm going to do it. You know, that's a no-brainer. You're getting free money, and that 35 goes towards the project, not in anybody else's pocket. Okay, that being said, I'd like to talk about the police department. And it was a shame that the National Night Out did not happen this past year due to COVID. We have a lot of new officers that the public has not met yet. I do think it is important for the citizens to know who the officers are, and vitally important for the officers to know the citizens. I know that if the police department has any community programs, they'll be letting us know. They do somewhat depend on the public for information and support. I think our PD does a great job. They are highly trained and skilled at their profession, and we need to let them do their job and not tie their hands by telling them how to do their job or where and when to do it. I don't think we need to try to micromanage them. Please, if a citizen sees a problem, let them know by calling dispatch instead of the local office, then let them handle it. Facebook, instant message, and email will not get a timely response, and the local phone is not always answered. So they ask you to call dispatch, and that number is 940-627-5971. In the 12 years I've lived here, there are many times that the police have been in the neighborhoods a lot, and other times they're out on the highways a lot. And I figure that's because they have information and that's where they need to be. They get information from other agencies that the public is not privileged to. By working the highway, they are being proactive, causing the rate of wrecks to decrease instead of reactive when the rate of car wrecks and fatalities increase. By catching the drug runners, it is keeping those drugs from reaching our kids. Even if that drug runner is passing through this town, if he drops it off in Fort Worth, it's coming back to Wise County. All aspects of their job are equally important. So in support of the PD, inform them if you know there's a problem, and then let them do the job they're trained to do. None of us are trained to do that job. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up is Patty Mitchell. Patty, when you're ready, please.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Rome City Ordinance 1.07.001. The public judges its government by the way public officers and employees conduct themselves in the post to which they are elected, appointed, or employed. People have a right to expect that every public official and employee will conduct himself in a manner that will tend to preserve public confidence in and respect for the government it represents. Public confidence and respect can best be promoted if every public official and employee, whether paid or unpaid, and whether elected or appointed, will uniformly treat all citizens with courtesy, impartiality, fairness, and equality under the law, and avoid both actual and potential conflicts between their private self-interest and the public interest. And that's the end of the ordinance. Since November's election for former mayor and assistant fire chief Michelle DeCredico has repeatedly voiced harsh criticism of newly elected mayor and council, both at council meetings and on social media. In addition to park board members also appointed to their positions. For example, quote, "Can't we all work together for the good of the town?" Unquote, was a frequent Rome Forward refrain leading up to the election. When reminded on Facebook recently, a Parksburg member replied, "Nope." And the following was recently posted by the former council member Mikowski. This is quote, "The mayor and I did not win. This town is going to be a mess for the next 8 months. The ASSHOLES in this town just set up back 10 years, unquote. The line becomes blurred when personal opinions of city officials are often perceived as official information. Given that I have openly supported both Mrs. Wilson and Mrs. Majors, the violation I received today would appear to be retaliative. Thank you. I'm done. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you. Next up is Shirley Mize. Shirley, when you're ready, please.
Good evening. My name is Shirley Mize. I live at 170 Russell. I wanted to address item F on the agenda, professional service agreement with Kimley Horn for wastewater treatment plant renewal professional service agreement. Why is the city not going out for new bids on the engineering work needed on projects to be corrected/fixed? Why does this city continue to use the same engineering firm and pay overpriced costs to feed their needs? Any projects of this city should always be out for bid, so the city gets the best price for the money spent. This continues to happen, that this city is not to fill one company's pocket in the best interest of Rome. We could hire our own engineer employee for what we pay Kimley Horn. Please spend citizens' money wisely for the city of Rome. I'd like to also address, as far as what several people have mentioned in the past 3 meetings, is I'm hoping that to see that this council pulls their act together and they start working with one another as a whole. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up is Kathy Coffey. Kathy, when you're ready.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. My name is Kathy Coffey. I live at 1102 Mount Lane. I know some people are anxious to be able to have in-person meetings again, and I'd like to know when the in-person meetings start again, if there's a way that we can also continue them virtually for the people who are not able to attend. I've enjoyed being able to see and hear the meetings no matter where I am. In my opinion, this will allow more people or more of our citizens to be involved. Second, I keep hearing everybody gripe about let's work together, let's do this, let's do that. Okay, enough. It's like the pot calling the kettle black. Get over yourselves. Yes, I had questions about the grant. Doesn't mean I don't want the money. I want to understand where it's coming from, how much is going to be actually done for what. Pardon me for asking questions. And I want to thank Rhome Watch for their Facebook page, because where else can you find out everything that you've done wrong that she could say, but you can't. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our last speaker for the evening is Mr. Ronnie Moore. Ronnie, when you're ready, please. Mr. Moore? Mr. Moore, are you on the call?
Shannon, let's move on to old business. Just for general information, Ronnie's mother's may have had a setback from some Mohs surgery, so he may not be around today.
Okay.
But everybody say a prayer for Miss Marie. And we'll open up old business. The first item on the agenda is B, discussion regarding regarding updated ordinances for code compliance, nuisance, and substandard buildings. Ashley Majors, Councilman number 5, is shown as the action person. Ashley, are you with us?
Yes, I'm the first one again.
You are. Go for it.
I am. Hold on, let me turn my book to it. So, okay. All right. I'm speaking on behalf of some of our buildings here in town, and as you know, here in just a couple of months, we're going to go over our comprehensive study. Sorry, give me a second. And that keeps going over. So I want to go over some of our buildings here in Rhome are just calling for they're dilapidated. So an Article 3.05 is dangerous as substandard buildings, which is also a nuisance, and which dilapidated, substandard, or unfit for they're hazardous of public health and safety of welfare. Any buildings without windows, or any buildings by neglect, vandalism, fire damage, or aging or elements, any buildings by neglect likely to attract children or vagrants in unsanitary conditions. So, which we have some buildings here within town. We have, Cynthia, I forgot to ask you, can I give the addresses, or should we wait?
Addresses
Of the buildings here that I'm going to state. The ones.
Okay, well, I know
Or should I
I think you're going to mention 150 Front Street that we are working on.
Yes. And then there's another one. I won't say the other two buildings that the code compliance officer. I'll just describe.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Ashley. I think we may have lost Ashley.
Yeah, I think she's frozen.
Do we want to come back to Ashley when the ice is over and she's back with us?
If
Let's
you want
move-
to, you can move to the next agenda
Let's-
item when you come back.
Let's do that. If she comes back, we'll pick up where we left off.
Did you lose me? Hello?
Oh, Councilmember Majors, are you back? Your picture's frozen.
I'm back. Sorry. Can you hear, can you
Okay.
see me?
We could
can
see
hear
you,
you.
but you're not moving. You're frozen, but we can hear you, so go for it.
Oh, sorry.
I think she's coming back alive.
You might have to go to the next one. I'm sorry.
Okay, well,
I'm
right
here.
there you are. You're alive and well.
I want to be back. If I go away, we'll just go to the next one. I apologize. Okay. So for 6 years, we've had a meth trailer. Let me finish, Sam, if you don't mind. For 6 years, we've had a meth trailer within our town until Cynthia, well, I've asked Cynthia, and it's been sold on the courthouse steps. But this should not be an eyesore. We've had community events, we've had dignitaries who have visited our community, and we've had to look at this. And we have that one that's been in our town, and anyone who also drives in to visit, there is another one right off of Main, with the addresses at Main, but it's right when you enter, and it's at 685 Main Street, and it's right behind Dairy Queen. So for 12 years, it's been a neglect that way. And for about a year, the doors have been open. That is right off the freeway. So it is, hello, vagrants, come on in. Is that something that you want when we have Rolling B that was just purchased for $1 billion? Is that something that we should be proud of? And then we have some other ones that are just hello, have boarded, doors and windows that are busted out. This is increased crime for windows and boards. With windows and doors that are open on buildings. It increases crime. Neighborhood children can go inside, do things you don't want to. Pedophiles could go in there. Vacant homes create a financial strain, which in return decrease tax return. This is, stuff that we don't with in our community. We just spent $16,000 roughly. Don't mark me on those words, for our UTA to do our comprehensive study to revitalize our town. And we have not done anything. I'm not going back, so I'm not picking on anyone, but we haven't done anything, and these buildings have been sent forward. So I think going forward, we need to do something. And I understand that our code compliance officer has been in contact, but I think we need a paper trail of to see what we can do. I know that the person at one of the buildings wanted to make it a museum. So maybe our city manager, our mayor needs to contact that one of the gentlemen to see if that could be something. I just found this out today. That could be something that maybe be a donation back to the city. So sorry, Cynthia, I just found this out doing my research, but let's see what we can do, and let's be proactive. So that's what I have for this evening. But let's see what we can do, and let's start getting the ball rolling. It's the first of the year, and let's move forward. So thank you. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Okay, Sam has got his hand up. Councilman Eason, did you have something for this?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Actually, I'm going to tell you I agree with you. I would like for this town to look as wonderful as possible. But I know that this council generally sits as the zoning board of adjustment. And so I need to ask Mr. Donovan, is it really appropriate for us to hear some type of biased discussion on these properties when we may end up being the ones that sit in judgment on these properties as to what needs to be done? Yes, it'd be nice if everybody had wonderful properties and everybody kept them up to very high standards, but I really have to question if these people are, let me finish, Ashley.
Sorry, I didn't know.
So it is first question, Mr. Donovan, are we actually legal here? Is this a legal discussion of we're saying that these things are disgraceful and they need to be fixed? Disgraceful maybe wasn't the word you wanted, Ashley, but it was the sentiment. Also along these lines, before we start calling out someone else for the disgraceful nature of their buildings, we have a boarded up school that I find disgraceful. That we should clean up our own house before we start calling out any of our citizens. Mr. Donovan?
Yes, and for council and mayor, my name's James Donovan. I'm an associate at Taylor Olson. Mr. Atkins, Carvin, had a conflict, so he asked me to fill in. I apologize for my voice. So if anybody has difficulty understanding me, my lovely 1-year-old daughter brought home a virus from daycare and shared it with me and my wife. So I'm getting over it. It's not COVID, I promise. Everybody's fine. Just from the neck up, I sound awful. The rest of me feels fine. This body, city council, excuse me, is gonna, you sit as a board of adjustment, you'll sit as the building board. You'll wear different hats. And so is this a proper discussion? Yes, because you're talking about policy and appropriating, city efforts in enforcing such a policy. There'll be different standards and different criteria that you'll need to apply when you put on that different hat and you're actually reviewing a substandard building, or if you're reviewing a variance or special exception or appeal when you're handling a board of adjustment. And that's just kind of the different hats that you guys have to wear as a single body. And being a smaller municipality in Texas, it's something that you guys just have to do. So the discussions can kind of mix, but when talking policy, these are things that you guys are fully allowed to talk about. You'll have to probably restrain yourself when you're talking policy versus particular buildings and actual like enforcement action. But right now, if you're talking about broad strokes about the things you see around your city and what you'd like to see cleaned up, that's all high level policy in my opinion. And we're not talking about actual plans of action for any specific property without giving certain property owners their proper due process and notice and everything. I hope that answers your question, and if not, you can.
So we can't talk about specific properties at all?
I wouldn't talk about specific plans of action for specific properties, but you can definitely talk about certain properties as examples of what's wrong when you're talking about, formulating a policy. Using examples is fine.
Okay, thank you.
So sorry, I did not know who you were, that you were filling in for Carvin. Sorry. So I don't know who you are, so I apologize. So with me saying my speech, I am in, and I can say that, correct?
I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit.
Okay, sorry. Love our internet here in Rhome. So my speech, I'm in, that was perfectly good.
That was fine in my opinion. In terms of, again, okay. When you're talking broad stroke policy, it's fine to talk specific examples.
Right. Boarded up windows is boarded up windows. Not in favor of it. I know our old school has them. I know that there's some buildings around town that have them, but looking at ordinances and already meeting with Cynthia, we've met and already discussed this. So, but yes, so Sam, I'm already addressed it. So, but so yes, guys. So however we can work with Bill, our code compliance officer, and move forward. I don't know if there's anything, Elaine, I guess you're next, but whatever y'all think. So, Elaine.
I just wanted to give a little bit of information about the trailer that's over on Front Street.
Yes, ma'am.
My husband and I actually went to that auction, and we wanted to try to purchase it and then make it into something that the city could use. But it went so high that we did not purchase that. And so some of the things we learned in that process is that when you've got a modular or mobile home sitting on the property, that there is a different process than just buying the property that the new owner has to take. And so he has to do some notifications, try to find the prior owner, because it's titled a different way, it's handled a different way. And so that process is, you probably shouldn't move it off of the site for somewhere between 90 and 120, 160 days. So if they are following the steps that are set out by Texas law, whenever you buy something like that, it may take them a while to get that cleaned up, because it's they're trying to follow that. I'm not sure that's what, I don't know what their purpose is for buying that property or anything like that, but I do know that that was part of the research that we did.
You can ask, Cynthia's going to say, but I tell her every time I speak to her that I'm going to ask her about it just to, just to annoy her, because she's worked very hard, and everyone can say thank you to her because she has worked very hard to get it out of here. But it is a resident in Rome who purchased it. But yes, Cynthia has told me everything about it, but Cynthia, you can go ahead and let everybody know. But yes, to Cynthia, she's worked really hard to get it out of here. So hopefully soon. But go ahead, Cynthia.
Well, as you all know, I mean, it's been around here for a while, so the former city administrator was working on it. And yes, I did pick up the baton and got several calls on it. Not to go into the details, they couldn't find the owner. And so they had to get an ad litem attorney, and there was just a series of comical errors that happened within that process. And then, of course, we had COVID, and that kind of lengthened that process because we thought it was going to be going to auction last summer. Actually, it went, or actually last March, I believe, when I first got here. The bottom line is that as soon as it sold, we were in touch with, the compliance officer, of course, knows about it, and we were keeping in contact, and we had to wait until the owner of record was formalized online, and that process for substandard buildings has been initiated. Contact has been made. And, what I would say is when it comes to code compliance, I think we all want to live in an attractive community and keep our community clean and safe. And so when it comes to code compliance, we try to get compliance. We're not trying to give tickets out. So our compliance officer tries to work with our homeowners when they're given notice about a violation. And there's a process that we follow according to our ordinance. I will tell you, council, as you already know, you authorized him to work on code compliance for 10 hours. Now, it may be something that you all want to look at increasing the hours that we dedicate for code compliance. That will be a decision that you all will make, I think, during the budget process when we have our visioning workshop and budget workshop in a couple months. What I will tell you is that he's going to be reactive. So if people have complaints, we do have an online complaint form. So go ahead and submit that. And then he's going to be reactive as well. So he's going to do both as much as he can in 10 hours. So he has been working on that, and that definitely is an eyesore. And so I think we've got, we're in a better place now than we have been in the past, and sometimes these things take time. I will tell you, we're also looking at our, we're getting a substandard building SOP in place, making sure that we are following the law, because there is very specific law that we have to follow on these things. And we are also going to be bringing an updated policy for an ordinance to you all, for you all to review, to see if we can't make it clearer and have more steps in there of touch points to try to gain compliance with our residents on some of these buildings. So staff is working on this, and we understand it's a priority for the council.
Does everybody have their phone on mute if they're not speaking? I'm getting feedback again. I think that may have helped. Michelle? Michelle Ty, you're on mute. There you go.
Yes, I guess. The 10 hours you were saying that he worked, is that per month?
Per week.
Per week, okay.
Yes, sorry.
And he also, Cynthia, can you also let us know what his other job duties are?
Well, he's in Public Works. Council changed that, as I understand, towards the end of 2019. We had contracted with another individual for code compliance that was doing it for 8 hours. And as I understand the history, so somebody who was here can correct me if I'm wrong, but the council, the former Public Works director came up with a plan to use an existing Public Works employee who has experience in this area with some other cities he's worked at. And, you know, he drives around quite a bit with his duties for water, wastewater, which is what his main duties are in Public Works. And so he's able to, as the former Public Works director put it, kind of kill two birds with one stone while he's driving around. So I think it was an effort to try to get more and with less. And so that's where we're at right now. And you know, something that we can evaluate if council wants to put more resources towards that.
Do we have any more discussion on this? This was not an item for a motion. It was just an item for discussion. So we're going to move on to item C. And this one is discussion and necessary action regarding police department future planning and community policing, expertise. And Sam, this shows you as the driver. Sam, you're on mute.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually didn't ask for this to be on tonight's agenda. I originally asked for it to be on last week's, and just to, I believe it was last week's, maybe 2 weeks ago, just to let the council know what Cynthia and Chief Love and I had talked about. I know that Chief Love had taken an action item, and I didn't give him any kind of a deadline. The council, when we discussed it, didn't assign any kind of a deadline. So
at the last council meeting that it was discussed at, he said that he would bring back recommendations to this meeting.
Okay, well then, Chief Love, what do you have?
I'm not sure if he's one of our many callers.
Well, he knew he had this agenda item and he had some comments prepared.
Okay, and I don't see him on. Sam, we can share these with you and of course all the rest of the council. What he put today.
I have read these comments.
Okay.
It was emailed out to everyone. It all sounds like you know, we would all like to work together nicely, and these are expectations that we have from the police officers in general. I don't actually see a plan for how we're going to address some of the issues that we discussed. It's a nice document, good positive things to say, but I don't read a plan here. If there's something I'm missing, because the document I'm looking at is Summary of Rhome Police Department Community Policing Plan. I see some policy, I don't see a plan. But
Can you
I
read that?
don't know.
Can you read it out loud for the citizens and everyone?
You bet. Rhome Police Department Community Policing Plan Summary, today's date. Community policing is a collaborative between the police and the community that identifies and solves community problems. With the police no longer the sole guardians of law and order, all members of the community become active allies in the effort to enhance the safety and quality of neighborhoods. Community policing recognizes the fact that most community problems can best be handled by allowing the individual officer the flexibility to resolve problems rather than just clear the call. Citizens are accountable for participating in community policing. Community policing can never be successful without participation by the community. It is the policy of the Rhome Police Department to embrace the tenets of community policing and engage the community in a positive and trusting manner. All employees will extend reasonable assistance to the public. Reasonable assistance means the level of assistance that call load and current demand levels would permit. Employees must not neglect community services in the belief that the police function is restricted to crime control. The purpose of this plan is to guide personnel and to affirm the department's commitment to seek out opportunities to interact with the public and to build trusting relationships with the community. Police department employees shall provide reasonable assistance to all residents in need of service. All personnel are expected to seek out opportunities to promote trust and positive dialogue with the public. All officers are expected to spend a large amount of their shift in the neighborhoods and contact anyone they see out in their yards or walking. The chief, sergeant, and any other supervisory personnel shall monitor this activity, including participating in writing with officers from time to time. The chief and/or sergeant will review data from these processes monthly to track successes or deficiencies. Now, I know that when we discussed this, we had discussed what can be done about the perception of people driving too fast down School Road. We had discussed the traffic there at the corner of Service Road of 287 there by the Big Z, and the traffic backing up on 287 and what could be done about that. We discussed the issue of people driving too fast through neighborhoods, specifically Crown Point. And when we had talked about plans for how we can resolve these issues, I was expecting for a plan for how to solve these specific issues.
Hello, Mayor. This is Chief Love. Can you hear me?
Yes, who is this?
Okay. All right, Sam.
Okay,
So go ahead, Sam. I've been trying to get in for 10 minutes and all couldn't hear me. Go ahead, Sam.
No, sir. Go ahead. I was just reading what you had written to everyone.
Well, that's not all I sent to the city administrator. I sent another memo today specifically. You know, you'd asked me if I had 2 additional officers to address these problems at the no U-turn and the speeding on School Road and the intersection down there, what would I do with them? And I do have a plan I sent to her today. Cynthia, did you get that?
Cynthia.
Anyway, Mr. Eason, the plan basically is if we had 2 more officers to target these problems, I would assign 1 to work the U-turn sign down on Main Street, 1 to work on on School Road for the speeding, and then they would work that all day long, basically 9 to 6. But at 4 o'clock, they'd move down to the intersection where the backup is every evening at the Service Road and 114 West, and then another one down in front of the Loves, because as I told you before, my experience, you're going to have both places covered. And they would work Monday through Friday, a 40-hour week instead of the 42-hour week that our 12-hour people work.
Okay, Sam, you're muted. Sam, there you go.
Thank you. So your plan would be that if you hired additional people, that they would be dedicated just to these specific tasks, that it wouldn't be, you would have additional staff and then the staff would be responsible for these additional tasks, that the tasks would be assigned to just the individuals.
Right, whoever they were. If we hired 2 additional people, I'd have one for each task, and then of course in the afternoon at 4, they would both move to the 114 West traffic problem and, operate a traffic direction there.
Okay, I look forward to reading your plan.
Okay, I will. I'll get with Cynthia and we'll get it to you somehow. I'm sorry that I didn't send it to her, I think, until this morning, so that may be the problem. She, hadn't had a chance to pass it along. But I did put together the plan like you asked, and please look it over and suggest anything different.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're moving on to item D, discussion and any necessary action regarding amending Chapter 11, taxation of the city's code of ordinances to include disabled veterans to the list of ad valorem tax frees. Sam, I guess you got this one too.
Yeah, yes, thank you very much. I remember actually making the motion for this when we originally did this for the disabled and over 65. And as I was making this motion, it was my intention that we include disabled veterans. Okay, somewhere along the way, that must have been lost. Okay, so I would like to make a motion that we include disabled veterans in this tax break.
Do we have any more discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
You have an ordinance attached here that amends the basic ordinance. Sam, is that what you're recommending that we approve, or with changes, or what?
I read through that very quickly, and I didn't see in that ordinance that we were actually talking about adding the disabled veterans, because that was item D. And I see the ordinance from 2018-12. I don't see a change in it of adding disabled veterans. I just see the ordinance from 2012 or from 2018.
Member Eason, it was in the supplemental packet that was sent out this morning. And in the third whereas, it talks about in the second whereas too, entitled "The Disabled Veteran and the Surviving Spouse of a Deceased Veteran to Certain Exemptions from Taxation." Third whereas, in order to add a residential homestead exemption for property owners who are a disabled veteran or the surviving spouse of a deceased veteran.
I think the attorney has a question, right, James?
Yeah, well, I was gonna explain kind of what was sent in the supplemental and what you guys did in 2018 and what you can do and what you can't do. The thing to understand is that these tax exemptions, the tax frees, the veteran tax exemption, the 100% disabled veteran, basically property tax waiver, these are all come from the Texas Constitution, and there are enabling statutes in the Texas tax code. And once it filters down to the city of Rome, all we can do is what the statutes allow us to do. So just to make sure everybody's clear, Chapter 11 of the Texas Tax Code allows us to have a tax freeze for people over 65 and people who are disabled, and that is a Social Security designation of disabled. That's the tax freeze that municipalities are allowed to impose. The state automatically gives veterans that are not 100% disabled, they automatically get a veterans exemption that they can apply for property taxes, and that's also in Chapter 11, and that's automatic. The final, which is a tax waiver. So for any of you that are familiar with the Veterans Administration, how they designate disabled status among veterans is you do it in percentages. And so the veterans that are 100% disabled, there's a tax waiver essentially that they can also apply for. If they're 100%, they can have their property taxes completely waived. So there was never, I know, I don't know what your motion was, Mr. Eason, back in 2018, but even if you had added it, it wouldn't have been effective because the statute only allows us to have a tax freeze for people over 65 and people that are disabled under the Social Security designation. What we've supplied, my office has supplied to the city tonight is to basically codify in the Code of Ordinances the everybody but 100% veteran disability exemption. And that's because from what we were told, a citizen went to Wise County and was seeking to apply for a veterans waiver, tax waiver exemption, and they were told that the city needed to do something. And so despite my office, me and Carvin both are of the opinion that the city doesn't have to do anything in this regard. There's no harm in the city passing the ordinance that we've drafted. If it makes somebody at Wise County move the paper faster, it's fine. But when it comes to what the city can do and can't do, it's very specific that what comes from the tax code. So.
Well, then I have to ask for clarification, Mr. Donovan, okay? Mm-hmm. Forgive me for being slow here, but does a current disabled veteran resident of Rhome already have that tax exemption for city taxes?
They have to be proactive and apply for it. Their eligibility is there. The city doesn't have to act for them to go and get it, but they do have to, just like every citizen has to go and apply for a homestead exemption. If they want to have their homestead exemption for property taxes, you have to go to the appropriate office and fill out the appropriate form to claim your status.
And when this person went to Wise County and applied for it and was told that it doesn't exist, what is their recourse?
My understanding is, because I actually called Wise County Central Appraisal District and asked them, and I think it was a miscommunication regarding just kind of the understanding of Wise County and what the citizen actually called in and asking for, because they specifically asked about the tax freeze or the tax ceiling, however it was phrased. And I think the county official said, well, that's something that the city has to give you, and the city hasn't done that. And they're not an attorney. They don't know the full scope of that kind of review. And so I talked it through with the county official, and I think that was just a miscommunication. But they're, if they should, and I've looked at Wise County's Central Appraisal District, Central Appraisal District's website, and the form is available. It's actually a state comptroller form that they can fill out and submit, and then if they're denied, I'm not really sure what the appeal method is, but I don't think it would be too hard to figure that out. But that's what they just need to do.
Okay.
This is Joanne. I'm confused. So if Josh or whoever can help me with this, so what we've got right now, leave it alone, and it does not affect specifically any veteran, nor if anything we do to it doesn't help any veteran. Is that what I'm understanding?
So what we have right now is a tax freeze that doesn't impact any veterans.
Right.
The proposed ordinance that we have is really based on the communication that my office got earlier, but before this meeting even, was what we thought was a solution that, in my legal opinion, isn't necessary. But if somebody at Wise County thinks it's necessary, it doesn't hurt the city to adopt. And so that's why we drafted it and put it forward, a pretty simple ordinance to help anybody at Wise County say, okay, well, we can have a veterans tax exemption in the city of Rome. You know, it's not worth, I think, the city's time, even my time, to fight it out with anybody at Wise County when we can take the simple action of adopting it and it doesn't hurt anything, if that's what somebody at Wise County wanted. So it was really a practical solution, I think, in our part. But the legal implications, I don't think are really there.
So if a veteran has and wants to apply for the deductions that are allowed, all they do is present a form to the Wise County appraisal and they'll adjust accordingly.
Yes, I think so. The not to get super technical, but it's the 1122, which is the disabled veterans, everybody but 100%. They can send that to the appraisal district, and I think the 100% disabled veteran, if they have that 100% designation, they actually have to send that to the county tax assessor, the actual county office, not the appraisal district. But again, I can look up that further if need be. But I know it's one of the two that the for sure like I said, the regular disabled veteran for sure is to the appraisal district, and then the 100% I think might have to go to the county.
Okay, Josh. Josh.
So yes, Mr. Donovan's correct on those forms. Every veteran, when they are classified disabled by the Veterans Administration, receives documentation stating what their rating percentage is, and it can range anywhere from 5% to 100%. So they would have to provide that documentation from the VA as well with the tax forms to either the county or the state, depending on where they are, what they're trying to get tax exempt for. So in the ordinance as proposed, are we proposing it for a veteran with any and all ratings, or is it just 100% rating? Because like many things that are afforded to disabled veterans, it depends on the increment that you're rated at, whether you're 50% or 100% unable to work, or you are able to work. How does the ordinance read on that?
Well, I think the ordinance, the amendment that I read, whatever the disability, it granted them that exception, if you will. Now, what I think I read, Josh, and you're certainly better than me at this, is if you go up and you're 50%, then, and the guy beside you's 10%, they both get a deduction, but it's based on some scale relative to the disability. Cynthia, am I saying that right?
Well, I think James explained it. What the situation is. I mean, I'm certainly don't claim to be an attorney. I mean, I did talk with him and Carvin at length about this, because as I was talking with various folks, I think there was a lot of confusion about the action that was taken in 2018, and then, you know, miscommunication, I don't know, up at the Wise County Appraisal District. So, as you know, I just asked them to come prepared to kind of lay it out. It is confusing, I think, and as I understand it, I mean, I'm just repeating what they said. I mean, the 100% disabled, they're going to take their documentation, like Josh said, that they get from the VA, the documents that they're 100%. They're going to file a form, and I did go online. I think it's textvets.org, and they've got all the forms there, and the county appraisal CAD does as well. But that is one. It looks like you file as a comptroller report, and you file it at the tax assessor collector. If it's a percentage, you're going to file it with CAD. And it's already granted to them by the Constitution. And so the city doesn't need to take action on that, because this is going to be, they're just not in that equation. So I think what they came up with, they just wanted to make it clear. If Wise County was saying, well, we need to have something on the books, we just wanted to, like you said, come up with a practical solution that made it clear what the intent of the Rhome Council was and is, and go ahead and codify it, though, you know, it's their opinion that it's not necessary. James, did I summarize what you said accurately?
Yeah, and to answer Mr. McCabe's question specifically, this is just the ordinance that's in your supplemental packet. Because it was a specific response to the specific citizen's request, it was for just the tax exemption for anybody below 100%. So it doesn't address the 100% tax waiver. And it's only because that was the specific request that kind of went through the citizen to the city to my office. So if we need to add that for anybody else from Wise County, I'm happy to add that. But again, for both veteran exemptions and the waiver, I don't feel like the city has to act. But if it makes somebody at Wise County move, I have no problem sticking it in our code.
Ashley?
I wouldn't think you would have to add the 100% because the government, if you're 100% just disabled, it's automatically frozen, correct? That's what my understanding.
It's a waiver for basically all of your that's I read it quickly today. It's a waiver for all of the property taxes if you're 100%.
Right.
But just like I said before, it's just like the homestead exemption. You have to apply for it. You have to make the county aware that you have that special status. So it's
right.
You do have to have some sort of proactive take and get your documentation before them, so you make sure you can impose your eligibility.
Right. If you're 100% disabled, then your taxes are frozen. So, because my dad's disabled, so his taxes are frozen. So, on that one. So I know that. So I just didn't know if you wanted to add it, that would be it. So, well, thank you.
And what y'all guys talk about it? What do you want to do? Do you want to leave it alone or add it as a? Sam, you started this. What do you think?
I'd like to do whatever we can to make it easier for our veterans. Because like I said, I have a friend of mine that's a disabled veteran. They contacted Wise County and were told no, okay, that it's not an option. So if Mr. Donovan believes that our passing this ordinance will make it easier because it'll identify to the people in Wise County that they can do this, then I think we should pass it.
And is our intent to freeze taxes for whatever level disability you have?
I hadn't even considered it. I was just trying to represent, some kind of an additional benefit for our disabled veterans. I didn't know about the 5% to 100%. I'd rather hear what Mr. McCabe has to say on that.
Yes, Josh. He threw it to you.
Thanks, Sam. No, I'm with you. The 100%, yes, it's automatic by the state, but you still have to apply for it. It'll wipe out your property taxes, but you still have to apply. I'm for any, disabled veteran in a tax freeze, but they do need to understand that even if we approve this ordinance, they still have to be proactive in applying for it with the county, and they won't necessarily get 90% or 100% waived. The county may determine it by the percentage of your disability rating. So, and they won't know any of that until you provide that paperwork to the county. So I'm with Sam. If the attorney, he's advised that it's not going to hurt anything to approve this. If anything, it helps our veterans. So I'm all for pushing this one through.
Do I hear a motion? I think Sam started out with a motion, but I think we've kind of messed his up.
So are they going to, sir, go ahead, sorry.
No, you're good. I was just going to.
So are we going to, is it by the percentage of their disability? Is that what?
It's all controlled by the tax code. It's already in it's Texas Tax Code section 11.022. And so it has an actual little chart in that actual statute that talks about the disability rating versus what the exemption that the dollar amount exemption that they get. So, and when I've worded the ordinance to where we just track the statute, so we don't even have to worry about that.
Just for clarification, the statute for disability of 10% but less than 30 is 5,000. On 30% to 50% disability, it is 7,500 of the assessed value. The 70 is 10,000, and 70% disability and over is 12,000. So what he was saying, what this ordinance did was he referenced that section 11.22, and that section gives what I just stated. My question, I just for clarification on the motion, and I know we haven't had it yet, but if we're wanting to add, right now we're adding that the percentages of disability for disabled veterans on the 11.22. If we still want to add the 100% as well, just again to be consistent and have it all in there, please let us know, because we'll have to go back and have James add that back into this, because it's not in the current one you had in your supplemental packet.
And I like what you just read off. I mean,
so that would apply to, say Josh puts in for it, and his level of disability would tell him he gets his taxes frozen or he gets a percentage off.
He gets a percentage.
I think the way it's written now, it's all everybody.
I think what Mr. Donovan said was the way it's written now, the county goes ahead and applies those percentages based upon what the state has. Is that correct, Mr. Donovan?
Yeah, so what Cynthia, excuse me, the city administrator just read was the dollar amounts. So you get, it's an exemption. So it's the dollar amount comes off of your appraised value, and it's based off of what the dollar amount's based off of what your disability rating is. And that's what so there's, I keep having to say this, there's no tax freeze for veterans. And I can't tell you why that's the way that it is, but that's the way the Constitution was amended, and that's the way the statutes read. If you're 100%, you get a complete waiver, you don't pay any taxes. If you are other than 100% you're a veteran, you get this, you're eligible for this exemption. And then the tax freezes are for over 65 and then disabled people, and that's a Social Security designation, disabled.
So really, we don't need the amendment.
You're getting worse. They live in Cleveland. Solid gray hair. I did not even recognize her. She's solid gray.
Don't surprise me.
She was looking at me and I was looking at her. And she kept
Could someone mute, please?
Who, identify yourself, whomever.
Oh, I was just asking someone to mute their mic. Someone was not muted.
Okay.
Based upon what Mr. Donovan just said, it sounds like what we need to do is pass the proposed ordinance as Mr. Donovan wrote it, so that we would follow the state procedures. And this would really just be a reminder to the people at Wise County that, yes, disabled veterans do get a deduction.
That's the best way I could have phrased it. Thank you, Sam.
Do we need to add one more thing to that to say if they apply for it or word it
It's just the mayor. She's almost illiterate.
Green Acres. Green Acres.
Could you say who you are, who's speaking?
I'm sorry, who just made that comment?
About Green Acres.
Okay, I couldn't hear the comment. Something to do with Green Acres?
Cynthia, could you please tell us?
I'm sorry?
Cynthia, could you please tell us?
I can't tell. I think it was caller 19, but other than that, I can't tell. Let's see what you guys see.
Well, we need to move along. Unless
Yeah,
an individual wants to come
need to
back.
mute their microphones.
Okay, moving along then, I think based upon this discussion, I would like to make a motion that we pass the proposed ordinance as prepared by Mr. Donovan.
Do I hear a second?
Elaine's, Joanne.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'll
Elaine,
second.
I got you. Are you wanting to second? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Any more discussion? Well, let's call a vote. We have a motion and a second. We've got no additional discussion. So Josh McCabe, place 1.
Aye.
Michelle Ty, place 2.
Aye.
Elaine Priest, place 3.
Aye.
Sam Eason, place 4.
Aye.
And Ashley Majors,
Aye.
place 5. So it carries completely by unanimously, big words. So we have it ready to go. Okay, we're going to move on now to an interesting thing we've got going. We have 2 visitors with us tonight. And I'm going to see if I can, John Martin, and I'm not sure who the other guy is because he's not showing on my screen.
It's Mr. Bob Dransfield. He's our bond counsel.
Okay, there's John. John's on there now. And
Mayor, I've joined you as well. This is Bob Dransfield.
okay, you're on the other cover. Okay, so we're ready to, how are we going to do this? We want them to, the bond counsel, Cynthia, you better lead this because you know all this good stuff.
Well, as you guys have been grappling with all the various priorities that the city has as far as budget planning, the question is coming up, how are we going to pay for these priorities once we get them evaluated? So there's a lot of different financial tools out there, and so we've got John Martin, who is with Hilltop Securities, and he understands a lot of the financial tools, as does Bob Dransfield. The question keeps coming up, or the statement, and Bob, I'm going to let you speak to that, is we had a failed municipal complex bond, and so we can't go out for the same thing. So what actually can we do? So I think those are some of the questions for council. And again, as we plan, I think they can illuminate some of those options for us. So between the 2 of you, I'll let you decide, duke it out, and who wants to go first.
Go ahead, Bob. Why don't you talk about the election, with the complications there.
So the concept is, and the way they changed the law not too long ago, is that if you have a bond election that gets voted down by the voters, you can't come back for a 3-year period of time and issue certificates of obligation for the same project. Now, that doesn't mean you can't issue certificates of obligation or any other debt instrument for the same, for another project, but you can't do it for the purpose for which the voters rejected the GO bond side. There are additional financing structures like tax notes, for example, that have behind them an ad valorem tax pledge, which is what you would have had with a general obligation bond that was voted by the voters. And you could issue that for the same purpose that you had the failed election for. However, the drawback for that is you have a limitation on the maturity amount. So that's a debt instrument that can't have more than a 7-year maximum maturity. People get around to some of these things by saying, okay, we're going to do that, and then you're going to refund that before that 7th year maturity comes around and refund it out into a little bit longer term debt instrument. and that's the permissible process right now under the laws as they exist today. But you still have to show that you can afford to pay for that period of that obligation during that 7-year period of time. In addition to that, you've got revenue obligations that could be issued for certain improvements, and usually those are going to be related to some sort of an enterprise, typically a water and sewer improvements or things of that nature, that are secured by revenues of that enterprise. So you have that. You also have, if you're looking to do equipment, you can do these so-called contractual obligations. They can be secured by an ad valorem tax pledge as well as a revenue pledge, and they can have a longer maturity than 7 years. They typically can go out, as long as 40. In today's marketplace, most people are in the 20 to 30 year range in terms of a maturity. So those are just some types of instruments that you have. But for the municipal complex that you had, for a 3-year period of time from that election, you're kind of precluded from coming back and doing certificates of obligation for that same purpose. So, when people do is they start looking at what are the component parts, if you needed to do infrastructure and so forth, as John will tell you, you're going to probably get one of the most attractive interest rates if you can put a citywide tax pledge behind an obligation. If it's just solely a revenue-based obligation, and sometimes people are using it water and sewer revenues or solid waste disposal system revenues or something along those lines, or if you find yourself in a category that has things like sales tax that is pledgeable, that could be an option to you as well. But those are always going to be viewed a little bit differently than a citywide ad valorem property tax, which is generally speaking going to be your best borrowing cost in that marketplace. You're going to always find that you've got to find specific statutory authority to do what it is you're looking to do. So if you're going to finance something with a debt instrument, you've got to be able to show the Attorney General's office where that authority is coming from. And that's one of the jobs that we would try to say is, you're saying if you identified something, we'll say, okay, we can finance it in this fashion, under this way, and so on and so forth. But you can't just say, here's a pot of money, go spend it as you want to. You're going to have to be specific about that and find specific statutory authority for that type of discussion. So with that, I'll stop and let John kind of carry it over, because there's a financial impact to the city on all these types of things. And if you have a rated instrument, or you're going to do something through the Water Development Board, if you're going to do X or Y or Z, they all have different nuances to them. And so John has prepared a nice chart that kind of highlights a lot of those things that's probably worth, at least at this early stage, talking about, making you aware of, and then we can certainly address whatever questions you all might have.
So Bob, just to clarify, they can go back to the voters again. They just can't issue non-voted.
Oh, you don't have to wait 3 years to go back and have another bond election if you wanted to do that. You could go back. You're still going to be limited to those 2 uniform dates, the May date and the November date, and you still have to start that process early. So you're just like on your city election, you're coming up on the time frame beyond which you cannot call a bond election. So you're going to have to take action. For example, if you were in this cycle to try to shoot for a May election, it would have to be called by February the 12th. Right. So a little planning. So there's that, 90 to 78 days lead time for these elections. And it's a little bit different than the traditional city elections because the notice requirements are a little different. So it's you can't just say, well, we're going to vote for council and we just put it on the same schedule as we have for the council. It'll be on a similar schedule, but it'll be a little bit different because there's a different set of statutes that apply to the bond side or the debt side. But John, you're exactly right. You can go back. There's nothing that precludes you from going back to the voters, with that particular proposition. Or anything else. Now, if you do go to the voters, again, you only can have one topic in a particular proposition. You couldn't say, let's do library, city hall, and streets in one proposition. In that example, you'd have 3 different propositions: a library, city hall, and street propositions. So, John, you might want to highlight a couple of other things that are in your chart.
Yeah, sure. There's Bob covered real well the different financing alternatives that might be available to to the city and moving forward. And as you suggested, thank you. Such as the general obligation bonds that are the voted bonds and revenue bonds, which are typically, water and sewer type stuff. And sometimes we do these for economic development purposes secured by sales tax. There's also the COs, as Bob referred to, don't know that the city has done, I think they have not done COs in the past. We have voted general obligation bonds. We've done some tax notes and that sort of thing in the past. That, as Bob said, are 7 years final maturity. Interest rates are extremely low right now. So if you were looking to do something other than what was sent to the voters, it's a great time to finance capital improvements. The capacity that you all have is based on your current tax base for issuing tax supported bonds. Let's assume that you wanted to go back to the voters. What we were talking about is at that point in time was going to like a 10-cent tax rate increase. And if you stayed in that same area, you'd be just under $5 million is what could be done in terms of general obligation bonds to try to keep that tax rate at a 10-cent increase.
The other thing I might mention to you all is all of these things are going to have a time frame to them. So it's more than just a 72-hour notice. And so depending on the type of instrument you're looking to do, you may have to do a notice that's out there, published in, like a certificate of obligation requires you to have an action by the council, then publish notice, wait at least 46 days before you can take action to authorize the debt instrument. And after that authorization, you're probably talking about a month or so after that to put money in the bank. And that time frame between the sale time and the money in the bank for all these instruments is roughly going to be a month for planning purposes. So I would suggest to you that normally you're in a probably 60 to 90 days, probably could be done in less than 90 days, but almost no matter what instrument you're going to do, you're going to have a time frame associated with that. And all of these instruments go through the Attorney General's office for approval. And even if you're talking with stuff like through the Water Development Board, they've got their own time frame as well that always is factored into this. So it's not a situation that you want to say, look, I need money in a month. Can I, what can I do? That can be a pretty tight schedule to do. So I would just suggest to you from a planning point of view that realistically you're in a 45 minimum days, more than likely 60-day period, and depending if you're going to try to have an official statement that goes into the marketplace, or it's going to be a private placement where John helps you find a buyer for the debt, you're just going to have that factor that comes in the timing on when you're going to need to make the improvement. I'll also mention to you, and then I'll hush for a while, there's a process if you're looking to do tax exempt debt, which is going to be your cheapest borrowing cost. If you needed to go out and make an improvement or acquire some property, for example, tomorrow, you could pass a reimbursement resolution within the right time frame that would enable you to spend money that you have available to you right now to make that acquisition. And then if bond proceeds are received or debt proceeds are received, you can reimburse yourself for that expenditure from the proceeds of that debt. So let's just say that you wanted to go out and buy a new fire truck and you had to spend whatever amount of money it takes to do that. And, those are pretty expensive, but, and you took money out of the general fund to do that. And then you issued a debt instrument for that acquisition of that fire truck. You could reimburse that money from the general fund with the proceeds of that debt instrument. But you have to go through a couple mechanics to do that in terms of a reimbursement resolution for federal tax purposes. So there are a lot of specifics that have to be minded to when you're going through this discussion.
So one other thing, just in terms of where the city is right now in terms of outstanding debt, there are 3 pieces that are outstanding now that the city did issue in 2007 They did issue COs at that time to finance water and sewer improvements, and then those were later refunded in 2016. There's only 938,000 remaining there. There was a tax note that was issued in 2017 for just under 700,000, and that matures in 2024, and that's 369,000. And then we did the general obligation improvement bonds, which were for water and sewer improvements, actually, 2,620,000, and that was done in 2019. So that's really the only piece that's the longest piece, goes out to 2044. The other two, you have a lot of debt rolling off in 24 and 25. So that's attractive for you all to be able to kind of layer in some new debt into your existing payment structure. So that's a nice thing about where you are right now. So really, the bottom line is we want to go and pursue the City Hall again. We'd have to go back to the voters because we can't get to that any other way than to ask the voters again for that project to be approved. All these other things that Bob and I have discussed are open for any of the other types of financing mechanisms that we discussed.
Okay, we have Elaine, no, I'm sorry. Sam asking questions. Sam, can you hear us?
Yes. First of all, John, Bob, thank you very much. So I think, Bob, Mr. Dransfield, you said that if we wanted to have something put before the voters for the May election, we would have to have that finalized or applied for, or what was it you said about February 12th?
You have to call the election, and you do that either by a resolution or an ordinance so within that 90 to 70 days before the election time period. So February 12th for this May 2021 election is the last day to call the election. And to do that, you would have that resolution or ordinance. It would have whatever the proposition is, or propositions if you want to have more than one. And that would have to be adopted and gone from there. Then you go through the mechanics of course, there's publication requirements and posting requirements and translation things, because English and Spanish at least, and you're not in Tarrant County, but if you were, you'd translate your stuff into Vietnamese as well. So there are a lot of mechanics associated with that, but you have to have called it by that time frame, or you're opting out to the November date. Again, you're restricted to just those two dates, those uniform election dates during the course of a year, and both dates have a pretty good long lead time to call them. But you've got to take that action by that February 12th date.
So there's really no feasible way we could make anything by February 12th.
That's pretty aggressive right now, given where we are.
Well,
February 12th is 78 days prior to the election. So that's where he's coming from, telling you how many days lead time. So that's really getting even shorter than what his anticipated lead time was of 90 days.
And that's just the last day you can do it. You have to call it now, before that 78th day, or on or before that 78th day.
Okay, so basically any option that we have for financing is not going to be done by the May election. I mean, I understand you're not saying no, but you're talking about incredibly aggressive, and you're being very kind about it, but I'm looking at the feasibility of if we wanted to put something before the citizens, and it couldn't be for City Hall, anything to do with City Hall, it would have to be for, say, the police department.
Well, it could be for City Hall if you wanted to, because you can go back to the voters. If you have a failed election, that 3-year period I've talked about only precludes you from issuing certificates of obligation for that same purpose. but you can go back to the voters time and time again after an election. So it's you know, if
You can go every May and November if you want.
yeah, I mean, so you have, I mean, whatever date you pick of those two, what you have to have an action item by the council to say we're going to call an election on this date for this purpose, and to do that you'd have to say what's your dollar amount and what's the purpose going to be, and there's some mechanics. I mean, you could issue, you know, the maturity of these bonds could go out to 40 years, but most people are not issuing 40-year bonds in today's marketplace. They're typically 20 years or 25 or 30-year bonds. But, you know, the statute permits you to go to as long as 40. And if you're to be on that path, you're always going to hear me say, I want to be an advocate for you for flexibility, because you never know what tomorrow's going to bring. So, you know, if you said, I want to do a street proposition, for example, I would say do something like, you know, constructing and improving streets within the city. And if you said, no, Bob, I want to do this street and this street and this street, and I've got these specific streets I want to do, that's fine. That's a policy decision that you all make. Just know that that's your contract with the voter. Your contract is then it's just for those specific streets, and you can't move that over to an unspecified street if you're going to be that specific in the purpose. So I'm always going to suggest to you that it's better for the council to make that determination and exercise their discretion as to how they want to take that general purpose and apply it. But it's your call as to how you want to present it. But that's another thing that has to happen, you know, before that 78th day, whatever it's the May date or the November date. All this caveat as well is making sure that the, you know, the legislature, if they do something different on these elections, that's of course may factor into this discussion.
Mr. Dransfield, we got a question from Ashley Majors, place 5.
So since we can't make, we're getting cutting it close to do a bond, can we do a certificate of obligation for the May election? I mean,
well, you don't have, the certificates don't require an election. What they do require is a notice of intention to issue the certificate. So if you were to go the certificate route, again, remember, you can't do this for the failed proposition. So the municipal complex that you had, that would not be the purpose for the certificates. But if you had a police station, for example, or public safety facilities or something like that, you would have to pass a preliminary action item. Would be the council would be authorizing the giving of the notice of intention to issue those certificates. And that notice would have to be published twice in the newspaper, with the first publication being at least 48 days before the date you anticipate selling those certificates. So if you were to say we want to sell certificates on June the 1st, you would make sure that your publication was at least 48 days before June the 1st, and the council to authorize that publication would be enough time so you can get the thing published timely. But you don't have to go to the voters, but you are subject to a petition. So if 5% of the registered voters petition and say, we want you to hold an election on the determining whether or not to issue these certificates, then you would have to hold the election. You would have to defer that deal and not hold the election.
so in your personal opinion, because you see what money and debt that we're in, I mean, we're very limited on funds and we're very limited on time, and we need a police station, our fire department, and they were only wanting to do on the last bond, wanting to only do a facade to make it look pretty on the outside. But what are your, I mean, since you do this, what do you think we can, with our income, with our money in the bank and coming in, what do you, in the time that we have, what do you suggest? What, you know, with your expertise?
I guess I would answer it this way. I think you always have to determine what capital need is, and then figure out what's the best way to finance it. So if you said that you need to do police and fire improvements, how do you want to describe that? You know, whether it's a building, whether it's to get new equipment for those departments, whether it's to buy a new fire truck or police cars or whatever it's going to be. And that's your highest priority. And then you're going to look at, as John Martin alluded to, I mean, if you have to borrow funds, it's actually a pretty good time to be in the marketplace because your cost of capital is pretty low.
Okay.
And so, that's a, if you're needing a longer than a 7-year maturity on something for your affordability, a certificate of obligation makes a lot of sense. It's a widely recognized debt instrument. The nice thing about that is you have a technical pledge of your tax dollar, as well as a technical pledge of, you have to have some sort of a revenue source to sell those for cash, those certificates for cash. And normally it's going to be $1,000 pledge of something like water and sewer revenues.
Okay.
That's a nominal pledge, obviously. That doesn't preclude you, though, and I want to make the distinction that if you had water and sewer revenues or other city revenues available, you could apply those revenues to the payment of the debt service without them being pledged. So the legal pledge with a certificate of obligation is going to be two things typically: ad valorem taxes, citywide, and some sort of, usually a limited pledge of a revenue stream. And when that, in my example of $1,000, when that pledge is made, you make that $1,000 payment, that pledge is fully satisfied, but that doesn't preclude you from continuing to use water and sewer revenues if they were available to offset the payments or to make all the payments on those certificates. But so you have to, in my mind, you got to prioritize what your needs are and what you need to finance, and then figure out what is affordable. And John will do a great job of trying to help you collaborate collectively with what makes sense economically, and then figure out the right debt instrument.
Right.
I think maybe, if I could interrupt here, Councilmember Majors is talking about was, can we go back, and part of the proposition to the voters in November that failed for this municipal complex, pulling up the information that the frequently asked questions, and included in that was a fire department facade and police department. So given that was part of the information and part of the intent, that would be excluded from issuing COs to do that, right, Bob?
Yeah, I need to go back and look at it, because I thought the proposition was really a municipal complex that was going to include some of those components. Well, if we're now no longer talking about a municipal complex, and you really have separate and distinct police and fire needs, that's not part of a municipal complex, maybe that's a different scenario. There's enough difference maybe that would make sense.
I think we really need a police department first. Now looking at the pictures, and I don't know if they've shared it with you, but our police department is what we really need. Our fire department, yes. Our citizens and hearing now, my personal opinion, I was not in favor for the municipal complex. I think it's too large. I'm in favor for fixing the old city hall to revitalize what we're for our comprehensive plan. But our police is first, and then revitalize, and then work on the fire department and all the asbestos and everything we have going on there. I mean, it's shameful, and I keep saying shameful. It's the only word that comes, and it's sad. But we don't need a $7 to now a $10 million building. But thank you so much, and let's see if we can get all of this rolling and go back to our voters. This whole COVID, especially where we're at. I mean, my son goes to school here in middle school. We're a Title I school, so if that's the only way to kind of say it nicely, to where that's the demographics that we live in. So they're afraid of it. They're afraid of a big bond, and I think so. I know some of us some of the other ones on council, and some of the other voters are for it. So it's just kind of teetering with it, and taxes. So, whatever we can do. So however y'all can help us, I would greatly appreciate it. So thank you so much for coming tonight. So.
We have Councilman Elaine Priest that has a question. Elaine?
Yes, to kind of follow up on what Ashley said. We do need some help. We do need some guidance in understanding what is the best approach with our particular circumstance. However, we have not had the police department nor the fire department and some other buildings truly assessed to know what those structural challenges are. So we're not in a position until we have that assessment done to know where those priorities are that you mentioned. So we're going to have to do that first, and then when we will know them better, which of those two major buildings are in the worst condition, and maybe they're both in the worst condition. You know, we'll just have to wait and see how that goes. But we've not had those assessed. And the reason, though, that you know, some of that wasn't assessed is because with the police department, if the bond had passed, they weren't going to be in that old building anymore. And so we didn't spend any additional funds to have that assessed, for example. So we're recouping a little bit from the defeat, but we don't have the information that we need yet to determine truly the priorities that we have. So my question then is, it's highly unlikely that we would be able to pull anything together for a May election. So if we were shooting for November, what would be the deadline then for that? Is it also in
August.
You know, in February, or do we have a little longer?
It's going to be, it's around the middle of August, as John's suggesting. So, you know,
Okay.
you still have 78 days, but between now and then, you know, you still have to get it done by, and I don't have this precise date for November, but it's about like the 12th or the 17th or something like that of August.
Okay. All right. So we've got time to get those assessments really looked at and make those priorities, and then we can get the two of you, or John especially, to help us then look at our true options once we know what those priorities are.
I would say yes. I mean, John is very good about the number side, and he knows a lot about the law side. So I tease him about his law license, maybe it's a little bit expired, but he does a good job of providing that information to you. And
all right,
we can take care of you.
All
Okay,
right.
Ashley.
Thank you so much.
Okay, Ashley Majors.
Yes. Okay. So if we just wanted to get the police, hold on just a second. My computer might die. Just 1 second. If we just wanted to do just a new police station and wanted a new police station at that building, could we pull this together and just council, what do you think? Something over there, would y'all, what do you think?
I'm not sure I understood your question. I'm sorry.
I mean, if we got bids on it, I don't know how fast, and to do what he was saying about doing what did you say, a CO or?
Yeah, I mean, so I think, again, it would depend on the type of debt instrument you're looking at.
Okay.
You're saying, can you get all this together for a May bond election, even just for the police?
Yes.
That's kind of on the aggressive side of scheduling, I would suggest to you, because you got to have that done by February the 12th. You as a council have to have taken some action, calling the election by February the 12th. So that's in 2 weeks basically.
And if you call the election, you got to say what you want to do, right?
Yeah,
I think that's what Elaine's saying. We're not there yet for.
Okay.
If you're not there at this time for that, and you want to do something before August, just by way of illustration, then a certificate of obligation may be a reasonable way to do it. You would then decide, what your not to exceed number is, because you've got to have that. You've got to have the time frame in which you anticipate selling that debt. The council needs to meet and take official actions to call or to provide giving of the notice of that certificate of obligation issuance, which gets posted in the newspaper, published in the newspaper, posted around town at the city hall and 3 public places, as well as posted on your city's website. So you're going to do that kind of a process. But again, you're going to have to know what you want. You're going to have a dollar amount and a specific purpose. And then the pledge would be a tax pledge, and I would suggest probably a $1,000 water and sewer revenue pledge. And that revenue pledge is really what I think of as a legal fiction anyway, because it's for any kind of meaningful dollars, whether it's 1 million or 2 million or 5 million or whatever. $1,000 pledge is the only way you're doing it, is just be able to sell them for cash and go out and access the marketplace. So when you all decide what you want to do, then we can try to figure out the right timing. But that certificate of obligation timing, you've got to have a 45 or 46 day actually period of time from the date of that first publication until you can take an action item to authorize the issuance of that debt. And then you're roughly another month away from putting money in the bank at that point in time. So, when you start thinking about your scheduling and what you want to do, it's those types of questions that, John and I can help walk you through.
Okay, we've got another.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Bob, and I greatly appreciate it. I'm just wanting to get these guys taken care of. They've been very neglected. So thank you very much for all of your help.
We have Josh McCabe with a question.
So specifically on the COs, I know they're secured by the city's taxing power, but is there monetary caps on what we can ask for? Is there a maximum amount on what we can go for?
No, but you do have to what the maximum amount is that you need. Now, the notice of intention process, and let's just say, and I'm just going to use a totally arbitrary number. Let's just say that this improvement costs $5 million, or you think it is, and you do a notice of intention for $6 million, not to exceed $6 million. And then when it comes time to issuing the debt, and you've got whatever information you need, and you figure out you only need $4 million to make the improvement, then you would issue certificates of obligation for $4 million, notwithstanding the fact that you had noticed not to exceed 6. So, you're going to only end up issuing debt for what you really need to use. And John helps you refine that. And today's marketplace, people bid a premium and these other kind of things too that help maximize the efficiency of your use of funds. But you do have to go through, you could have a gazillion dollars as the notice of intention. There's a rule of reason, right? So you're not going to issue $50 million bond issue for a $2 million project. Tax law wouldn't let you do that, and other things wouldn't. But there isn't a specified limit as to how much debt you want to incur, but there's a practical limit. Effectively it's what can you afford with your tax base and this, that, and the other thing, and you kind of back into that number, but you also know that you've got to have a certain number to accomplish the improvement that you're trying to get done, and that's part of the process, right? So a lot of policy decisions for you all to decide, and then we kind of put the financial cap on it and the legal cap on it and kind of get it into a package that the council can consider.
Do you guys look at self-liquidating loans at all?
Well, maybe I want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying by self-liquidating loans.
I'm not sure I understand. I said in a meeting today, not knowing where it was going, and that's where it went, basically, in sales, and say that we're going to get 10 million. We don't even, this was for another entity that was looking, but let's change it to the city. We want 10 million. This company would put 10 million through all this good stuff, and they would invest money, which I'm not sure where it comes from, and it was out of the United States. And then they would get their profit margin if they got whatever. The money to pay for that loan would come in as 25% of their profit. It's one of those things that sounded too good to be true.
Well, the concept of kind of having public-private partnerships, is viable, but you also you've got to find the right specific statutory authority to do what you're looking to do. And you have to look at these things to make sure that at the end of the day, what makes the most financial sense to you. And oftentimes when you look at these variations of conduits that people promote, you'll end up finding that the total cost ends up being a little bit higher than what the traditional city cost would be. So, when people talk about self-supporting debt, for example, that generally means that you have enough revenue stream. Let's just say that you had, enough water and sewer revenues coming in that you would make all the payments on a certificate of obligation from that water and sewer revenue stream. So for your purposes, it would be viewed as a self-supporting obligation, notwithstanding the fact that you had levied a tax behind that. But you never planned to collect the tax. So I'll again make this, and I don't want to get overly technical, but I'm making the distinction.
Okay. I don't want to get off track here. It's just nothing you guys handle.
We typically would not do that, and it's always a good idea to make sure somebody who, on your interest looks at those things, because when you get private entities involved in these things, and there's some folks that do this stuff that don't go through the Attorney General's office and do this, that, and the other kind of thing, and that's one of the drawbacks for that lots of times is you can't really refinance that with a traditional refunding bond, for example.
Well, the story that I think I heard is you don't spend a penny of your money. They, whatever this magic company is, will take and put 10 million in Wells Fargo or whatever. The city draws from it for anything they want to draw. It didn't have any ties to anything. And it's self-liquidating because they just make so much money. They put in 25% of their profits until the bond is, or the loan is paid for. John's got the same look that I did, I think,
Yeah, I would just make sure.
It sounds like snake oil to me.
What's that, John?
It sounds like snake oil to me.
Well, it did to me too, but I figured you guys, if anybody would know,
well,
have seen snake before.
There are structures out there, but generally if something sounds too good to be true, it is.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry to stick that in the middle here. Anybody else have any questions for these guys? Okay, so we appreciate your coming out. Oh wait, Ashley always has one last question.
I just want to say thank you. We look forward to all of your help going forward. I'm just super excited that we're going to get police department, new city hall, and fire department. We need it around here. We're moving into the future. So thank you.
You're quite welcome. We'll help you in any way we can.
I just wanted to add that we were asked, somebody asked earlier, the November election is November 2nd of 2021, and the deadline to call an election for that is Monday, August 16th. So they were telling you right with mid-August.
Okay, and Sam, you had your hand up.
Yeah,
right.
Mr. Transfield, the failed bond was going to have a facility for the police department. And I don't know what can and can't be done within 3 years for another bond. If we just call it a municipal complex, does that mean we can't do another bond? But if we say we want to do the police department, even though the previous bond included a facility for the police department, would we be able to do that?
Well, that's certainly the approach we would want to try to take, is that what you went to the voters for was a municipal complex that was going to house a lot of different things that are city department kind of things. And now you said we're not going to go that. We're going to have separate, independent, standalone deals. And so I think it's a fair thought process to say you're looking to do a, police department or, whatever it is. The Attorney General's office is going to have a certification from you, from the city, that says you're not issuing these certificates for a purpose for which the voters voted down within the last 3 years. And so if you take the view that what the voters had before them was a municipal complex, even though it had a lot of different component parts, and now you're looking to just only issue certificates for one of those parts, but it's not the municipal complex, I think there's a very good likelihood that that would be fine, because it's enough of a distinction between what you're talking about. And I'm sure there's a variance in the dollar amount, at least I would expect there to be. But that's
so
the only.
it sounds like we can do it because we're playing, and I'm not trying to. We're just playing word games, okay? But it'll just be the police department, okay? Now, if we were able to get by some miracle something done by February 12th, and we wanted to do the police department has an existing facility, but it's not like we can renovate around them, that they would still need to maintain their offices, and we can't do construction renovation, that includes structure, ADA, moving walls, etc., redoing the electrical and the plumbing. We can't do that around them, but yet we don't really have another facility, a place to put them. But would we be able to do it in such a generic way as to say, we want money to help the police out and we'll figure out how and where we're going to do it later?
Well, you're probably going to need to be a little more specific than that. So normally you would expect a purpose for a certificate to be something like, constructing, improving, equipping, police facilities or police building or something along those lines. But you have to, you just can't be given a blank check, if you will, and then you always decide how you're going to spend it. It's got to be within the purpose for which that debt is issued. So, I think there's a really good likelihood, and I would feel pretty comfortable with this, if you said, look, the voters went to the municipal complex before, and while that municipal complex had a component part that was for the police, you're now talking about a separate financing that is only going to be used for police, and it's not going to have anything to do with the fire, not going to have anything to do with the other city offices and things of that nature. I think there's a pretty good likelihood you could comfortably say, in good faith say, that you did not have an election submitted to the voters that was voted down for that particular purpose that you're issuing the COs for. Now, you get some generic stuff in that when you say, again, you heard me say earlier, I'm going to be an advocate for flexibility for you. And so, but if you need to decide whether you need to build a new building, if you're going to renovate a building, or something along those lines, because that's going to dictate a little bit how those words that go into the authorization are going to read.
So it was my understanding, and I guess I was wrong, that before we could actually put a bond, proposition to the voters, that we actually had to have a design, some basic design concept done of what we're going to do. Like we could have a separate bond, one bond for the police department, another bond for City Hall, and say, okay, we're going to completely renovate the old City Hall. But before we start asking for how much money, we have to have some legitimate, credible estimate for what it's going to cost. $1.5 million, 200,000, right? I mean, we've got to have some credible way of saying this is how much money we need, right?
Well, I think from a legal perspective, you probably have a little more flexibility in that, but from a practical perspective and a policy perspective, if you're going to go to your voters and say, we don't really have any idea what this is going to cost, but we think it's going to cost X, they may have a question about whether that's the prudent way to proceed. So normally you're going to have some idea, even if it's a ballpark idea, as to what a cost is going to be, so you can put before the voters the maximum amount of dollars that you expect to ask them to approve and give you the authority to spend. But you don't legally have to go ahead and say, we're going to go, engage the engineer and get some architect plans and all this kind of stuff done beforehand, although that oftentimes takes place. You're oftentimes doing some preliminary work, but you're not necessarily going to be doing the detailed work. But you're going to have a pretty good ballpark idea as to what that cost is going to be. Otherwise, you find yourself, have you only then provided funds to build half the bridge kind of thing? Well, that's, you don't want to find yourself in that fact pattern.
I agree. Thank you. I've learned a lot. I don't know how much further down the road we've gotten. Mayor Pro Tem, thoughts?
Well, I think that I feel much more optimistic after having this conversation with John and Bob here, that that we can find our way through. But I just find it difficult. I mean, we have to look at the bigger picture here. I appreciate the fact that the police department, I've been in the police department. And there was a reason that the police department was included in the original bond that failed. However, we did not have that facility evaluated because it wasn't going to be utilized. And so we don't know if it's even structurally sound that we should spend money on that building. So, I just feel like that we are negligent in doing our due diligence by not having someone that is qualified to look at that building and see if it is structurally worth the investment that we're talking about here. And it will then also give us a clue as to how much money we need. That is going to be also true for the fire department. The reality is that neither of those buildings is in the dry. They both have leaks, water leaks, the roof leaks, and have had for a while. It may be that both of those buildings, we need to get them out of there. We don't know. And so I truly believe that we have to do our due diligence to make good business decisions and set priorities. To guess and say, well, I'm really saying that the police department is worse condition. According to what Mr. Dinsmore reported to us, he was really, really super concerned about the fire department. So I think that we have to do our due diligence. That's our first step. Do we have a lot to take care of? Do we want to get it done as quickly as possible? Surely we do, but we don't have the information we need to know the dollar amount, to know the true needs of those buildings. And so we don't want to get into such a hurry that we shortchange ourselves, shortchange the buildings, and shortchange the longevity of what we're trying to do. And so I really, really think that May is out of the question. I really think our next step is to take that process of evaluating those buildings so we make the right decision. We get into a situation where the police department has black mold in it and we've got to get them out of there and get them somewhere else. That's going to change the whole picture. You know what I'm saying? We don't know that, and we've got to know that. So I'm really, really pretty firm as a strategic planner that we have to do our due diligence here. And and the faster we get it done, the faster we know what we're dealing with.
And Elaine, what is your suggestion where we start? We've kind of keep talking this to death, but we've not set a start.
We do, and it's a round robin thing for sure. I think, Mayor, that probably the thing that we need to do is for you and Cynthia to look at what is our best step to get our due diligence done, and where we're going to find that in the budget. Number one, maybe it's one of those deals we can reimburse ourselves later, but nonetheless, it is absolutely important that we know that. And my fear is if we move forward with remodeling the old City Hall, and we come up with a plan to remodel it, and we think that it's going to be the administrative offices, and we haven't done our due diligence on the police and the fire department, and we get in there and they need to get out of those buildings because of safety issue, the plan that we would need then is it might need to be our police department instead of our administration building. It would be a completely different plan. And so we don't want to spend money on a plan, a building plan, a remodeling plan, before we know really and truly what's the best use for the old city hall. And I think, I know everybody wants to use that building, and we should use it, but I'm just saying due diligence comes first. We have to know what we're up against, so we can make good business
agree with you,
decisions.
but we need to start something and quit beating it to death, is my position.
I agree.
Ashley,
So I think Cynthia, maybe the two of you will brainstorm together and come up with the best plan. And if we need a motion tonight to move forward with that, then I'm certainly happy to make that motion.
Okay, and
that's what we're after.
From Ashley Majors, place 5.
If there's anything that we could do to get rolling on taking bids to see what we could do to remodel, get our certificate of obligation going on for May to remodel the old city hall, anything because I think that's our best, the best option we have, because our historic downtown, what we have in our Rhome comprehensive plan, I mean, that's what we have. Hold on, I have it in front of me. Oh gosh, I already have it all spread out. But that's what we have that we worked on for months. The retail in downtown, but if we can start out there, have our old city hall, we can, I mean, it would be a huge asset. So whatever we can do, we can have, Bob and John to help us. It would help with our economic development, and then we can move forward. So at least we can start with our old city hall and then move down later. Ponder has their city hall in their old building. Haslett has theirs. We don't need a huge municipal complex. I mean, right now we're small. We have in our 2020 census, we only have 1,900 people that live in our community. We don't have rolling V yet. So we don't need to plan for, a plan for the future. We need to plan for now. We're planning for something cute and quaint and take advantage for what we have. So I'm all for it. So how can we, let's do something and go, start like, as I can say, let's start cleaning up. Let's start working working now with what we have. And then, maybe then get I don't know what we can do, maybe get the police department. Let's maybe, if at all possible, move them into, I think it was $1,000 for the senior citizen center. Put them over there and then fix that one. But let's work with what we have. That's what I have.
Okay, and Josh.
And then with the old, real quick, I'm sorry. The city hall, I think, was what we could fit 9 offices in there. And I did speak, I know last one we were talking about a structural engineer. I called a general contractor who does Walmart's. And what you need is a structural engineer to, I think we're a little confused last week. So you need a structural engineer to come in, put a stamp on it, and a GC. And then once they do, they'll hire all of their contractors out. And then at the end of the, when they're all done, the structural engineer will come back and say, you know what, this isn't done here, and then they'll fix it. So it doesn't need a structural engineer for everything. I think we're a little confused last week, but that was it.
Okay, Josh.
Thank you. So I'm going to have to agree with Mayor Pro Tem on this. I know we have a lot of buildings that we do need to get fixed up and some that we need to get fixed quickly. However, we need to do our due diligence and bring somebody in to make sure that we can even use these buildings, to make sure that they're structurally sound before we just put out a CO or whatever else asking for money to be able to fix them up or start a plan on fixing them up. We got to make sure that we're going to be able to use them first. So I think our next step should be finding funds to bring in an individual to dig deeper into what our public works director and city administrator has already done with the buildings. They need to look inside the walls. They need to look at the foundations and everything else, make sure that these buildings are going to be good enough for us to even rebuild before we go forward with anything else.
Ashley?
Sorry, that's Michelle Ties in front of me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Michelle. I'm ignoring you again tonight. I apologize. Michelle is new to us and new to me. So, yes, ma'am.
Quite all right. I agree with Councilman McCabe and Mayor Pro Tem Priest. I believe that we do need to check these other buildings, because if there's black mold, if there's a safety issue, then those people, they take priority over other, it could change depending on what they find. And I was looking through my Rhome City Council Orientation Handbook, and it says that our primary duty is policymaking, which includes identifying the needs of residents, short and long-term visioning, and formulating programs to meet the changing requirements of the community. I know that we want to be present, but we also want to look to the future too. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, now Ashley, I'm sorry, I got the hands confused.
No, you're good. The old city hall has an asbestos report, so that one has already been cleared. And really, there's no walls there, but what walls that is at the old city hall has been cleared of asbestos. So that one is. So, I mean, I'm looking into the future and to our comprehensive plan. So I'm just what we're going to be going over, I think, in the next couple of months, and how we're going to revitalize, and any grants that we're going to be reaching out to. I think if we can get moving on it and it's our building, we need to be the first one there to see what else we can work around and what we can get other businesses. If it's, a coffee shop, if it's a bistro, if it's, a little small little grocery store. I mean, I travel all over the hill country, and that's what these towns, I mean, everybody, and sorry, Bob and John, if you want to exit out right now of our discussions, you can. It might go on a little longer, but I don't know. Everybody's working from home right now, and so they're visiting these little towns, and so a friend of mine is bought up every building in a small town in St. Joe, just because that is where they're revitalizing these small towns, because people aren't working in high rises and they're working in small towns. And I mean, they're working from home, and you can, take your laptop and go and visit, and, and that's what it is. So we need to look at our little downtown and what the future. So that's what I was talking about. We don't need to have buildings that are boarded, that don't have that broken out windows. And we shouldn't have our old city hall that is sitting vacant and wanting to build a municipal complex that our citizens didn't pass that was $7 million. We don't need to spend that. So I'm not in favor of it, and I'm not going to vote for it. And so we need to look at small things. I mean, so I'm not in favor. We're going to go for it. Go ahead, Cynthia. But we need to look at our old city hall.
I was just going to suggest, I mean, I know there's been a lot of conversation and there's a lot of big decisions that have to be made. We have talked about, I am hearing a theme about, and I have contacted our inspector to try to get some pricing on what that would be on looking at these buildings a little bit deeper, identifying on a priority order, some of these code issues that need to be dealt with, some of these other issues that need to be looked at, foundations, roofs, because if we have leaks, we could have mold, that sort of thing. So I haven't heard back from him, but I think what I might suggest is letting me work with him and find out how much that might be to our budget and where we might be able to find it. and come back with that information to get direction from council on kind of proceeding along the lines as Mayor Pro Tem has said, to try to figure out what we've got and take a really methodical approach to making sure we do our due diligence.
I think that's a great idea. And if everyone, I guess Cynthia, if you can shoot out, if it's all possible, an email of the comprehensive study plan, page 40, I think it is. Maybe the one prior to it. Sorry, it's a mess. Just so everybody can see what our downtown, I know we're going to go over it and do a workshop, but just to see what we want our downtown and what we're going to ask for grants for. That, yeah,
our comprehensive development plan is online, and I can certainly copy page 40 and send it out to all the council members. Certainly the downtown district is something that has been discussed, and so it is a key project mentioned. So I think that that's something that we need direction on from the council.
Okay, Elaine.
So, Cynthia, do we need a motion for you to proceed with the call that you've sent out and get that rolling?
Well, I don't think so. I mean, if you guys have just directed me to do that, I think we kind of had this conversation last week on something, I can't remember, but I mean, you're not authorizing me to go ahead and authorize him to do that. I'm just going to try to get some information, how much that would cost, what he could actually do, what things he could actually identify. And he's got a whole host of experts working for him. And then come back to you.
And once you speak with him, would you mind also looking at the budget to see how we might manipulate that some way so that we could make that happen as quickly as possible?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, Josh.
I'm through. Thank you.
Okay, Josh McCabe.
So while we're on the topic of financial options for budget planning, Cynthia, I believe that was finding out options on the lease options for the current city hall. Were you able to find out anything on that? If they're going to extend lease, or if we'll be able to do anything else with that?
Yes, I did, and I was going to include that in my report tomorrow, but since you've asked the question, I did meet with them, and they are willing for, they do not want to sell the building. They would like to continue renting. The lease would remain, and I will forward that to you all in my weekly report. I was planning on doing that. Basically, it would be a 5% increase. So which, and they're open to 1, 2, 3, 4-year term. I mean, I'm thinking you guys are thinking it might be somewhere along the line of 2 or 3, but I'll get that more information in that weekly report. But yes, I did meet with them.
Is there any way that they would consider month by month or 12 month with a cancellation clause or anything?
Well, I think they probably want at least a year, but I mean, I can certainly, ask that question. I think they're going to probably want at least a year.
But if I would hate to commit to 4 years.
Well, and they're open. I mean, they're open to a year with a year renewal. I mean, the current contract is 2 years, 24 months.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
The current contract is 2 years. So it's up obviously in November, as we've been discussing. So we could do another 24-month period. We could do another 12-month period.
Council needs to let me know, but I would go with 12 months, get high behind, let's get something going.
I think what we would do when the time comes is we would authorize the city administrator to enter negotiations on the contract, and then she can negotiate at that time what the options would be with any clauses. So I think that would be when we decide if we want to extend.
Is that not what you've already done, Cynthia?
Well, I don't want to get into too many details right now, but no, I mean, I was exploring I was
Right.
exploring options, so I didn't understand that I was authorized to make a deal.
No, we would have to make a motion to authorize her to enter negotiations on the contract. The previous one was just directing her to find out some information on us. So if we're going to go ahead and extend for 2 years or whatever we feel we do, we tell Cynthia, hey, this is what we're looking at. We're authorizing you to enter negotiations. So
And
that's
so
one
then
piece of the decision.
we then move that down the priority line, or
Mayor, can we come back to this? Can we come, it's not on the agenda. Can we come back to this?
It's on the agenda under financial options for budget planning. So we can't make a motion now to do it, but we're discussing that those options are out there for financial, because that's part of our finances, whether we can.
Mr. Martin,
Can
Yes.
John?
you're going to
Yeah.
leave us?
Thank you. I
We
think
have
that's
to.
for,
Stay. Thank you again for all of your hard work.
We do appreciate your time and effort. And Mr. Grantsfield, are you going to close the door on us also?
Well, if there's a reason for me to stick around from your perspective, I'm happy to do that, but I don't know that I can contribute any more to this discussion.
Right, and we do appreciate your input earlier. It will help us hopefully find a path with what to do.
Well, I'm sure we can do that. So we'll look forward to working with you to finding that path.
Okay, thank you so much for being here.
Enjoy being with you. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
You. Sorry, Josh. That's what I was just seeing if they could leave. All right,
No,
go
you're
ahead.
good. No, I was just saying, so because we're talking about financial options and budget planning, the information on the lease contract would fall under that. I'm saying at some other
Yeah, I
time,
think
we
we're
would have
okay.
to make a motion for Cynthia to enter negotiations. And she
Mr.
can do
Donovan,
that
are we
at whatever
okay?
time we decide.
Are we okay, James, with doing that?
I'm gonna be
Making a
honest with you, I'm a little lost on the conversation kind of transitioned to a specific contract, and I'm not really sure what we're talking about.
Letting Cynthia see what she could negotiate, not finalize, but negotiate for a contract and bring it back to the council.
No, Mary, that's not what I was.
I'm completely wrong.
The discussion was last week that we asked, or we directed Cynthia to find out some information that goes along with the budget planning because of our lease options on the city hall. What I'm saying is at whatever time we decide, when there is an agenda item, we would then make a motion to authorize Cynthia at that time to enter negotiations. I'm just explaining that's how it would happen. I'm not saying we do that at this time. So.
Okay, so we'll put that on the agenda, hopefully for whatever our next meeting is. And Ms.
Yeah,
Major
so we need
said,
to put that on future agenda items.
right. Ashley?
Okay, but can the mayor and Cynthia be there for discussion? And I don't know about a 4-year. Okay, can the mayor and Cynthia be in negotiation if we need to renew our lease?
Right.
We can authorize anybody we want to be there. So if we want to authorize Mayor, Cynthia, city attorney, it just depends on who we authorize.
Okay, that's what I just want to make sure. I'm worried about a 4-year, but all right. Thank you, Josh, for clarifying that. Thank you.
And it wouldn't necessarily to get a solid contract at that time. It's just enter negotiations. They would still have to bring that back to the council for us to vote and approve on that contract.
Okay, thank you.
They could say 2 years and then they bring it back to us. We say, no, we want 4 years. We can go back as much as we want until we feel that that's the contract we want.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Does anybody have anything else? Okay, let's move on down past this one, and it will go on the agenda in some manner for next go around. Okay, under F is in Frank. Discussion and necessary action regarding a professional services agreement with Kimberly Horn for West Wastewater Treatment Plant. Renewal the permit and authorizing the city administrator to execute all necessary documents.
So
Cynthia,
Mayor,
this shows you.
what Mayor and Council, what this is every 5 years, we have to renew our permit for a pollutant discharge elimination system. And this is for the West wastewater treatment plant. So that's all this is we contract, it's a professional service agreement with our in-house engineer. It's, James, I guess you can talk to this about going out for a bid. I understand that could be an option, but we do have an in-house engineer, and we have done professional service agreements for specific projects in the past with them. And since they have done the water master plan, the wastewater master plan, it makes sense. This is in the budget, and it is $15,000 for this professional service agreement with Kimley Horn. Sean, did you have anything to add to that?
No, ma'am. You basically covered everything that, we use Kimley Horn because they have done all this work for us, and the master plan, they know our system. When you start trying to bring somebody else in, you're beginning to start from scratch. So with Kimley Horn that has, again, done our water and wastewater master plan, understands our system, it is easier process and quicker process to have them do this agreement.
Okay, Ashley?
Yes, ma'am. Okay, listening to the residents, why did we not reach out for bids? We have all of the documentations. So the contractors could have got all of it and could have, they're all up to date. They all do know all of the systems, I guess. So why didn't we look for other contractors to try to save money? Looking over all of our financials, we need money and we need to save money wherever we can. So Cynthia and Sean, why didn't we? 15,000 seems a little. $5,000 could have helped us anywhere. So why didn't we? We should. So please help me understand this.
Normally, when you have an engineer that you work with constantly, you want to stay with that engineer because, again, trying to bring another engineer in-house, trying to work with them other ways, it sometimes gets construed, it slows down the process. Again, Kimley Horn has worked with us for years. I've worked with them for years. They understand and know what our system is and what it needs. And it's a quicker process. It's cleaner if we save, a few dollars, but again, it makes it a longer headache, or we don't know anything about this other engineer that might be a little bitter. They could miss the deadline. And so, we want to make sure that we understand and know these engineers that we work with for over the years, and just to try to find a low bidder is not sometimes the best interest of the city.
And can I interject? The city's actually prohibited under certain circumstances from bidding for professional services, and engineering is included in that as the Professional Service Act. So there's actually specific requirements for the city to go out and obtain professional services, and a straight competitive bidding procedure is not allowed. So this dollar amount, I think was 15,000 was the dollar amount. I don't think that dollar amount would even trigger like regular competitive bidding statutorily, but the type of service that we're getting, it wouldn't qualify under competitive bidding.
So you're saying we do not need to go out for bids?
You're not statutorily required for the dollar amount, but also the service, you're supposed to go under the Professional Services Act, and that's not a straight competitive bidding procedure.
Okay. Ashley, do you see where he's coming from?
Yeah, I do. For the dollar amount, but I think we still should go out for other bids. Go ahead, Sam. I'll let you speak and then I'll go back.
Thank you. We designated Kimley Horn as the city's engineer. They are our designated engineer. Listening to Cynthia and listening to Sean, this really just sounds like a housekeeping task to just go ahead and move forward and get this moving so that we can keep costs down because of what they already know. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we pass this and move on. Do I have a second?
I was still talking. I let you go back and stuff, so I'm still talking to Sean. So let me go back and talk to Sean first before you make a motion. I was being nice. So Sean, I mean, so I know you like to keep, because you've worked with them, you work with them for other cities, I guess you've worked for. But what I'm saying, I know Sam's trying to make a motion, but I think going out into seeing what other engineers are out there could be beneficial. I mean, to what there's other options because of what the issues that we have with our wastewater plants and what we have. I mean, we have a lot of issues. So, I mean, do you not think, I mean, just because they are your, I mean, I'll put it in a nice way, just because they're buddies, you don't think that we should look, I mean, just to see, so go ahead, Cynthia.
Wait, Kate. First, they're not buddies. I just want to make sure that they're not buddies. And two, the engineering company was already here before I got here. Due to the fact of the previous engineers were not adequate in their job. That's why Kimberly Horn was brought on to correct mistakes from previous engineers because apparently we went low bid.
Okay.
So Kimberly Horn is one of the top engineering companies in the state of Texas and also in the nation.
Okay.
So let's make sure that we're not saying that we're keeping this engineering firm because of buddies. That's kind of backhanding.
I don't. Hey, don't worry.
Let me just interject. Let me just interject. So let me just bring it down. So it really does come down to the fact that as James was referring to, I mean, if you're going to go out for an engineer, it's going to be a request for qualifications. Okay, the same kind of process we're doing with the engineer for this grant. And you look at that, and some of the things that you analyze when you're looking at qualifications, you look at their history. You can look at the fact that they're familiar. I mean, they developed the water and wastewater master plans, so they're very familiar. So like you said, there's a lot of issues and they're familiar with them. So that's going to save us money in the long term because somebody else might not be familiar with these types of systems, or they're going to, the idiosyncrasies that we've been having with the systems as well, with the mixes of the, chloramines and the chlorides and all of that. So again, from a professional standpoint, they are familiar with what we have. They are our in-house engineer, and this is really the most cost-effective. That's what staff is recommending, that they're really the most cost-effective to pursue working on this permit renewal.
Okay, Michelle, you had your hand up.
First, real quick, Sean,
put it down, or you...
Sorry, I just want to apologize to Sean. Sean, I didn't mean that in condescending in any ways. It sounded like first that, but I did not. I apologize. I did not mean that in any way. So apology.
Michelle, did you have something?
Yes. Did Mr. Donovan say that?
Whoops, we're losing you.
Professional, the amount wasn't even enough to put out for professional bids.
Yes.
Are you there?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Hello.
Yeah.
James, she was asking about the amount.
Did Mr. Donovan?
The statutory cutoff where it's required is $50,000. Now you can go out for bids for under that, and that's just for straight competitive bidding on dollars. What I was saying is the Professional Services Act prohibits the city from selecting specific services, professional services, including engineers, through straight competitive biddings. You have to go through a request for procedures, and it's not just straight dollar for dollars.
Okay, thank you.
And Josh?
Thank you. This is just strictly a procedure question, and Cynthia and James, please correct me if I'm wrong. But if a motion is made, we need to allow time for a second motion to be made. Either you get the second motion and you then continue on with discussion and allow people to call for a vote. But if you don't get that second, then it dies. So Sam has already made a motion. I would like to second that motion. And then now you can open it up for discussion and then we will call for a vote. Is that correct,
Okay,
Cynthia?
so we have a motion and a second. And James, did I see you hold up your hand? No. Okay. Anybody want more discussion? Okay, if not, we will call for a vote on the thing. Sam, do you want to rephrase your motion just to clarify everything for everybody? We're going to vote, but let's make sure we know what we're voting on.
The motion was to accept the contract renewal as is. Like I said, this is just a record keeping
Okay.
task.
Okay. Place 1, Josh McCabe.
Aye.
Place 2, Michelle Ty.
Aye.
Place 3, Elaine Priest.
Aye.
And
Aye.
okay, place 4,
Aye.
Sam Easton. And lastly, Ashley Majors, place 5.
Aye.
Okay, the motion has passed and we'll go ahead. Kimberly, do we need to make the award or just approve the award?
We're going to execute the contract.
Okay, so we're okay. All right, now let's move on to discussion on item G, necessary action regarding resignation of Planning and Zoning Commission alternate. And Cynthia, this has you down.
Oh, well, we've got the resignation. As you know, Councilmember Ty was the P&Z alternate. So with her appointment to the vacancy on council for place 2, she has tendered her letter of resignation on the P&Z as an alternate.
So do I hear a motion that we accept Michelle's resignation from P&Z? Josh?
I'll make a motion that we accept that and then add to the future agenda appointing individuals.
We don't have a second alternate, do we?
No, we have both the vacant positions are open. We have one application in. We received last week. We told them we would let them know when we received more and was able to put it on the council. It's
Okay.
and it's on the website and on the Facebook page that we are accepting applications.
I'll
Okay.
second Josh's motion.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any more conversation? Okay, here we go. Let's vote. Josh?
Aye.
Michelle? Michelle?
Aye. Do I vote on my own resignation?
Why not? Yeah, you do. And if we were going to appoint you, you could vote on it also. So it's a democratic process. Elaine Priest?
Aye.
And Sam Easton?
Aye.
And Ashley Majors?
Aye. Glad to have you.
Okay, so, hey, Michelle, you are no longer on the P&Z. You're stuck with us on the council. So, hey, hope you made a good choice. Thank you. And we're going to move on now to the next item, which happens to be mine, discussion and necessary action regarding the comments or constant calls I'm getting of the bikes and the noise in Bywell Estates. One particular person calls frequently because if it's nap time, they seem to ride behind her house. Now, I think there's 2 things that we need to know about, and that is one, are they on city property or not? And Chief Love, are you still on? Chief Love? Maybe not. There's comments.
Yes, I'm still here.
Okay. Well, that we're speaking about the dirt bikes and the track in Bywell. And
Right.
you and I are still getting contacted that still happening, you know, so
Right.
we thought we had a possible solution a couple of weeks ago, and evidently it didn't work. Does anybody have any ideas about what we can do? Yes, Sam?
So my question is, do we know if they're violating any city ordinances at all?
Yes, we do, and they're not. Yeah.
Well,
okay, so if they're not violating any ordinances, then we really have no options, because the council is a legislative body. And I mean, are you asking that we pass an ordinance?
No, I'm asking for solutions. Chief Love is about gone as far as he can go. And the one question that I personally have is the land that the dirt bike trail goes through and all of that, is it actually in the city or is it private property? And if it's private property, like Sam's saying, that certainly makes a difference. You know, but if it's city, we have an ordinance, well, even on private property relative to noise, but we do not have any decibel meters. But Josh, just a second, Michelle's had her hand up for the longest.
Well, I think Councilman Eason kind of made my point. If there was any ordinances that they were violating, I don't know what else we could do.
Well, the problem with, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I believe that we had this discussion before. I want to say it was a year or two ago. And
it's come up frequently.
Right. So if it's in an individual's backyard, there's nothing we can do. If we don't have an ordinance against it, there's nothing we can do. If it's on somebody else's private property, then that individual would have to take legal action against that. But basically, they're not violating anything. There's nothing we can do to stop it.
But, and I don't know this for sure, Josh, but evidently what I think I'm hearing, there's several houses here and there's space behind them that actually is city property. Now, if they're riding in city property, is that okay? Or do we need to get a decibel meter? Which I think if we do, as soon as they see a police car, things stop. Ashley?
Well,
Head Chief Love.
Mayor, on the subject of the decibel meter, our ordinance doesn't specify any decibels. So the ordinance we have on noise would have to be changed to where it specified how loud something could be. But okay. I'll be honest with you, I'm not a surveyor, but I've looked at the tax, maps and all, and I think those people, I think they're riding in people's quote unquote backyards. Those lots are pretty deep, and it looks to me like they're riding on private property. And the next question was somebody suggested, well, there's a strip of land back there that's designated for a future park. If they were on that, would that be okay with the city?
And you think that where they're riding their bikes, it's not on different property, it's all on their own property?
It's partly on their property and on their neighbor's property, and the neighbors are okay with it. This is the way it looks to me.
Okay.
But now, I'm not a surveyor, so I can't, talk with any kind of a qualification about whether I'm right or not, as far as about where the city property starts and the private property starts out there, because there's no fence or anything.
But now if they're on the road, if they are on the street, then that's a violation. Or
Yeah,
sorry,
we've already
I
stopped that. That's what started it. They were riding in the street. We stopped that. Then they would ride in the ditch. And since that's, street right away, we stopped that. We've got that part stopped. The complaint is now that they continue to ride in these quote unquote backyards and make a lot of noise and stir up a lot of dust.
Okay.
Chief Love, you and I and the mayor met on this. And when
Right.
we had that conversation, and I've showed both of you a map, and I'm going to share it right now, but I guess this is news to me because I didn't think from what you said before that they were. Okay, I'm sharing my screen. Can you all see that?
I can.
Okay,
Yes.
so.
Yeah, I can't because I'm not on the computer. So.
Okay, well, I've showed it to you in person, actually.
Right.
So
right.
the question is, and I guess my question to you, have you caught them riding back in this area behind these houses?
No, we have not. I've answered 2 calls out there, and when I got there were no dirt bikes.
Okay, that's what I thought, because if we don't know that, then we can't, we don't know. Now, I need to check the plat, but if you all, council members, if you all can see that, I think this is the area in question. But I was under the impression that they weren't there. They were back here, if you can see this area, and maybe going back in here. And this is private property, correct, Chief Love?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes, there is a house.
If you're in the area, I think you are behind it.
Yeah, sorry, Chief. Yes, there's an area that somebody actually made a motorcycle ramps out of dirt and all that stuff behind the house, and the house was vacant.
Right, and that's on private property right here.
That's all private property. Yeah, the former owner that lived there created a place for him, his kids, and the neighborhood kids to ride their motorcycles on their property, and it's like a dirt bike trail.
Right, so that's the complaint is, when you have motorbikes that are riding on private property, I think that's what Chief Love is saying, that we don't have ordinances that would address that.
And I will say this also, I talked with one of the boys' fathers today, as a matter of fact, and he brought up the fact that, well, we got them off the streets and off the street right of ways, and we're keeping them in the backyards and the private property, and are we just going to keep going and try to say they can't ride at all? I mean, he says, he's like the people. Some of the people out there will say, well, I moved out here in the country to be where it's quiet. Well, he's saying we moved out here in the country so our kids would have a place to quote unquote play. So that's kind of the other side of it.
Sure. And Cynthia, this map that we're looking at, so in your opinion, or by the maps, everything in front of the tree line are private property.
No, actually, I think when you go back here, and I've got to look up the plat, but I think when you go back here, I'm thinking that's part of that 39 acres of the parkland.
And that's what what I thought, but I wouldn't swear to it,
And you can kind of see
so. Does that make anything different?
Well,
Chief, if that's parkland,
public property.
I'm sorry, whoever just said whatever. Elaine, was that you maybe? Yes, ma'am.
I haven't said anything yet.
Oh, okay, we'll go for it.
Well, we had a little bit of a situation like that over here where we live, and of course, with the ranch being where it is, and with our house being the last house before you hit the ranch, we had kind of the same thing going on. And so what the city did was they put up some signs at the edge of the cul-de-sac saying no vehicles of any type past this point. We also had people cutting across there, running up the ranch's dirt just to get to the mailbox because they didn't want to drive around the block. But nonetheless, as soon as those signs went up saying that no vehicles could pass that point, it established, what that line was. Then everybody complied, and it was a relatively inexpensive. But if we have a question about whether or not they are getting on city property, maybe just a similar sign along that property line would just give them notice that that's city property, and that's not where they can ride their bikes or their dirt bikes or whatever. And so I'm just saying, if we're concerned about them getting on city property to ride their bike, we just put up some signage, and that worked perfectly over here. That's all.
Well, the problem I have with that is number one, do you not want them to ride on that quote unquote city quote unquote park, future park land? If you don't, then to stop it and us to be able to enforce it, you're going to have an ordinance to fit the sign that says no vehicles beyond here, or you could just put up a regular old no trespassing sign, and that would solve it. As far as being able to enforce it, for us to have some kind of a law, if you will, to be able to enforce it.
I don't think we, on public property, dedicated park, I don't think we can put no trespassing. So I think James are used to here, but yes, you're right. I think you're right about the ordinance. So we can probably limit the types of activity in dedicated parkland.
I'm still on the call. Yeah, I'm not sure about the trespassing. I'd have to research that one, but we can regulate activity. We could certainly tell them that they can't ride their dirt bikes.
Right.
James, could we limit that time-wise? I think we need a place for them to ride their bike, particularly if it's a park we're going to develop at some point.
Yeah, it's our property. I would have to, if it's dedicated as a park or if it's designated as a future park, I'd want to look a little bit more into that because I know parks have special rules. But as the city, if it's city owned property, the city as the landowner can control it. And so, if we want to prohibit a activity or limit an activity to certain times of the day or night, we're perfectly within our rights as the property owner to do that.
Okay. Can I ask I'm sorry, I've got too many hands up. Ashley, you were first, and then Sam.
I'll know where Cynthia went.
She may have gone to look for maps.
I'm trying to find the plat for Bywell. But anyway, sorry.
I have a question for Cynthia, or a suggestion. So Cynthia, for your park that you want there, this might be something. Why don't we suggest that we make it an outdoor dirt bike, skateboard, something for for them in that area, because there's so many dirt bike riders because I've talked to the police as well, because there's dirt bike riders in my neighborhood. So that might be a suggestion that might help.
Well, and you can already see there's some trails back up in here.
There's a lot of trails back there, and because that is already, they moved out there to live in the country. So if we made that, and it would be an inexpensive fix, it's making it. And Bridgeport did something similar. Did a dirt bike ramps and something. That's what they did in one of their parks. So it might be something for us that we should look into for our.
Well, if I can.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, I'm sorry. I'm not on video, so I can't raise my hand. But let me inject this. Anything short of prohibiting them from riding the dirt bikes in that addition anywhere is not going to satisfy our complainant. She doesn't want them riding, period.
Well, I don't, and I can't talk about our citizens, but I think Chief is very right. It's gone on for years in this particular individual. Sam?
I think we're looking at multiple issues here, and the first one is from how we started. These people are riding their bikes on their own private property. Is there anything that can be done? It sounds like no, because we're enforcing the ordinances as written. They're not violating any ordinances. I'm very sorry that someone is annoyed by the noise, but the thing is, someone has a right to do on their property what they're legally allowed to do. Okay, so we can't sit there and customize some ordinance just to penalize one person because we don't like the way they're using their property. Okay, that's unethical. The second issue is we've started talking about, okay, are we going to prevent them from riding dirt bikes on the public property, right? You know, back in the parkland. I don't understand that that's actually part of the issue right now, that the issue has to do with the noise of the riding on their own private property in their own backyard.
And
okay,
riding
so,
behind the complainant's house, Sam. They, I don't know how many residents they pass, but wherever they find to ride, it's not just their property. Now, I understand on their property.
So if you have evidence that they're riding in some illegal fashion, then cite them. We don't have an ordinance stopping them from riding back there on that property, as Chief Love pointed out. Is someone here proposing to creating a new ordinance that says you can't ride back there? I mean, because right now, if they're staying on their own private property, there's nothing we can do.
But what if they keep going and go 10 houses down? But by going behind the houses.
Then we cite them. Then we cite them. Give them tickets.
That's trespassing.
Well, Mr. Eason, and all of you, it's not trespassing unless the property owner says they can't do it. And as far as this goes, all of the people who live out there that they're riding in the backyards say it's okay. Now, if you don't want them on the what we're calling the parkland, then as the city attorney suggested, you need to address some kind of an ordinance that that prohibits that, and put some signage up, and then we can write tickets. The other problem is, though, I don't know if any of these are under 10, but you have to be 10 years old before we can write you a ticket.
And I think discussion of an ordinance is kind of expanding the scope of this agenda item.
Right, I understand. Well, actually, though, I mean, I understood this was to decide what to do about this complaint that we're getting and look for solutions. And, if you don't want them riding on the parkland, it's your business. You decide. It's not my decision. But for me to be able to stop it, I'm going to have an ordinance that says they can't do it. And then I'm going to have some signage up there warning them that they can't do it.
Does Elaine's suggestion have any merit?
Mayor, I think Josh.
Any possibility, I should say.
Well, signs are fine as long as there's an ordinance to back up the sign where we can, take some kind of action, but just putting up a sign, I mean, I'll be honest with you, those signs they put up out there in Chisholm, we can't enforce those because that property that they're prohibited on going on is not in the city limits anyway. But this is a different matter.
Yeah, okay. Josh, I'm
but,
sorry.
But as she said, the signs worked great. I'll admit that.
Yeah, they did. Josh?
So if this is dedicated parkland, before we start putting up signs and ordinances and whatnot, should we not direct this back to the Parks and Rec Board to review with their master parks plan to see what their thoughts and plans are with this particular property and allow them to come up with the options of ways to correct this, whether it's signs or not? I mean, that is their job if it's park land.
Well, that's certainly something to consider. Yes, Ashley.
All right, I have a son who rides dirt bikes and four-wheelers. I hate to tell kids to stop riding and have fun. And my son doesn't have backyards to ride in. And so it's unfortunate that this resident has the kids are riding behind her house. But they have an acre lot, and the dad has built jumps and whatever that we could see on there. That is their home. And there's not anything in our ordinances. It's not anything that Officer Love can go out and give citations for. So, I mean, what I'm hearing between what Officer Love is saying, I guess it's just in between neighbors. So, I mean, maybe it can go to the Parks Board. Maybe we could, you know, which would be unfortunate to the neighbor that's complaining to you, Joanne. Maybe it can go to the Parks Board and we can build a big dirt track for them. I mean, it's the only thing I could say. I mean, it's going to be unfortunate probably for one neighbor, but I mean, kids are kids. And I mean, my son loves it and has both of them. But I'm sorry, I can't help both of the residents. So I don't know how we move on from here, but I wish both the best. And, you know, so.
Sam, would you think we're dumping if we gave it back to the parks to see if they could come up with a solution? You're muted.
Yes, I do. I think, don't have a heart attack, Ashley, but I'm going to agree with Ashley. There's this is a dispute between citizens. Okay, this is a dispute between, and I really don't feel like we need to get involved in a dispute between neighbors. I'm very sorry that one person is upset by what another is doing. Okay, and that's unfortunate. I wish there was some way we could help them. I don't believe there is. Okay, but right now nobody's breaking the law. So let's move on. I mean, we're beating this horse to death, and it just comes down to two neighbors just having a dispute.
Okay, so you're suggesting.
I agree.
Sorry, Ashley.
Sam and I are agreeing tonight. He is my best friend, and
okay, let's not go too far, Ashley. Let's not go too far.
So Chief and I, the next time we get.
It's the biggest call I've had all night tonight, Sam. But I agree with you. I think it's just neighbors. Let the kids have fun. They live out there on those acre lots. Let them go out there and have fun. And we can't, you know, we can't get any more. Let's get over it and go on. It's after 10. Let's get finished with this.
Let's hurry. Okay, Josh, you were the one saying kick it back to parks. What's your?
So
I was only saying that if we were going to move forward with creating an ordinance or putting up signs, if we're all in agreement that we don't need to do anything such as create an ordinance or put up a sign, then I'm fine with dropping it and chalking it up to, you know, neighbors. I mean, I don't like it when my neighbor mows his yard and I'm trying to take a nap, but it's part of life. So
yeah,
I think though, if we were going to make major changes to parkland, that is not our decision to come up with.
And that may show up later on when they work.
Right. So in this case, I'm fine with letting it go.
Okay. Michelle, your thoughts?
Yes, I'm in agreement with everyone. I think that we can't do anything.
Yeah. Anybody else have a comment? Okay, we will drop this one. And, you know, I hate to say this, but the next thing is future agenda items. Who has anything?
I
Ashley,
do.
of course. You know, yes, ma'am.
Why do you think I always love to talk? I do. In-person meetings.
Okay.
I think we already passed a resolution that we were going to follow the governor's suggestion.
I
We
guess
did that
we
on
could
November 3rd.
unresolute, you know.
We're going to put it on I would like to see it on next agenda for discussion for in-person meetings.
Okay. I would like to see that we clarify the ordinance, and I will give it to Cynthia when I can find it, relative to when you put up political signs. There's two interpretations and everybody does it. So whatever the council wants it to be, we can put that, or we can clarify that ordinance. Anybody else have, Josh?
I would like to discuss filling the P and Z alternate positions.
Okay. Anybody else have anything?
Yes, and then I think we also need to talk about extending the lease on current city hall.
Okay. Anybody else?
Would that be me? On the, and I don't know if I can say this, but extending the lease on City Hall, would it be lease terms on City Hall, or would that include?
It would just include general discussion and any necessary action on extending the lease. So that way it's a little broad, gives us some room to move.
Okay.
Yeah, there.
Thank you.
Okay,
Sam?
one more.
Yes, sir.
I'd like an agenda item on including the mayor pro tem on all city negotiations.
Now, what does that mean?
We discussed whether we want to include the mayor pro tem to make sure she's involved in all city negotiations.
Instead of Cynthia, or in turn with Cynthia? I'm not sure. I'm not following how
We can
you
talk
word it.
about the details when we discuss the agenda item.
He wants to
We're
add.
gonna have to. Somebody said something.
He's wanting to add you and Elaine and Cynthia.
So all three of us would kind of be heavy hitting, but then we can discuss it. So we'll put it on the agenda, Sam.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, if we don't have anything else, we can see if we want.
Elaine.
Okay. Oh, okay. I'm
Mayor?
sorry. Yes, sir.
I
Yes,
just
ma'am.
want to be sure that it's on the agenda so that Cynthia can give her report about the call that she's made to get the buildings assessed.
Okay.
You know, I want to add, let's just keep adding. I want to add reports. Add Sean Dinsmore, reports from Sean, to add reports from Sean Dinsmore, weekly reports from Sean Dinsmore.
Okay. Anybody else?
I do. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
And I.
Hey, you don't want it? Ashley has some, you want to second it? Is that your two fingers? Hey, we got a motion to adjourn and a second. Do I hear we're ready to vote? Josh?
Aye.
Elaine?
Aye.
Michelle?
Aye.
Ashley?
And since I'm the last one, I want to tell everybody, thank you so much for a very productive meeting, and everyone, it was great. Thank you.
And I'll vote aye also. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, Sam's ready to go home also. Thank you all guys for showing up and staying this long. We need to set a goal for 2 hours and no more on our meetings, and I'm working on some thoughts on that, but it hadn't happened yet. But we are, turn your computers off and crawl in bed.
Good night.
Good night.